Ganesh, Arki, are we live? Can I start? May I request all the other speakers to have their...
Yes, you can start. You can start.
Okay. Well, hello and welcome everyone to the third and final day of the Green Lit Fest. Today, as I like to call it, is the Eco Kidlit Party, and I'm so delighted to have all of you with me. I'm Megha and I curate the Children's and Youth program here at the Green Lit Fest. Before beginning the program, I would like to introduce the team that has made this festival possible. Can we please have the founding team banner? So this festival was the brainchild of Benedict Parmanand, who decided after 7 years of having the Bangalore Business Literature Festival that he wanted to go green and have a green literature festival as well. Apart from me, the team also comprises Pooja Bhula, who's done a fantastic job on the general fiction and non-fiction list, which was day 2. And Debarati, who does so many different things. I probably won't be able to put all of them down, but one of those things is also curating the fabulous business list. Apart from us, there's also Ganesh Kirti, an MC, without whom the technical support for this day, and well, without Ganesh, the technical support for most of the festival would not have been possible. And Richa Chadda, who's been handling our social media for the last month or so. I would also like to now thank our advisors, Jairam Ramesh, Zai Vitika, Harini Nagendra, Radhika Suri, and Santosh Jairam for their valuable guidance. We are a new festival and it was really meaningful to get their inputs in putting this program together. So today we are gathered to discuss children's literature. And we tend to have a rather limited view of what is children's literature. So I'd urge all the participants who have joined us today to actually take a look at the books that have been longlisted and shortlisted by the festival, because really they give you the wide variety of books that people tend to bracket as children's literature, but really that can be an education for anyone beginning their journey to getting to know the natural world that we live in a little better. Also, I think it's become imperative living through these pandemic years that we better the relationship that we as human beings have with the natural world, and we shape better, wiser, greener minds, not just for a better today, but actually for a better tomorrow as well. And so green literature really is the need of the hour. And with that, I would like to begin today's program by inviting Neha Raghav from WWF India, who is going to be giving a presentation on why green literature matters. Now, when we talk of WWF India, it's always associated with wildlife conservation, but few people realize that WWF's footsteps into India began with its environment education program, and a legion of conservationists owe their journey in this field thanks to its, Nature Clubs of India movement. In the last few years, WWF India has done some fantastic work in bringing out some excellent books for children, green books for children. And Neha is going to be giving us a presentation on how one can build environmental stewardship through books. And I also just want to say that we're very sorry that Radhika Suri, the Director of Environment Education at WWF, couldn't be with us today because of some unfortunate personal reasons. We do miss her, but we know we'll see her next year. And Neha, over to you to do the honors to everyone in the audience. Neha has a very interesting quiz right at the end of her presentation. So do continue to watch. Neha, over to you.
Thank you so much, Megha. Thank you for having me. Before I get started, I would really like to thank Megha and Benedict for being and Sustainability Next for being such amazing partners, and also congratulate them on coming up with a Green Lit Fest. We have heard of all sorts of literature festivals, but this was perhaps the much needed one. What I'm going to be talking about today is, of course, a little bit of my own journey, of getting into reading and environmental literature, and also about WWF India's vision, how it all started, and what do we aspire to do in the coming year with respect to green literature. So, my own journey with books, as an individual and as an educator has been pretty interesting, So if I'm to talk about myself, my only regret perhaps is that I did not start early enough. Okay. I may be that one odd kid, amongst my group who did not enjoy the likes of Famous Five and Nancy Drew, when I was really young. But what I really discovered early on in life was that I completely enjoyed writing short stories and writing poems while I was still in school. And of course, over a period of time, I began to realize and recognize, what I like to read and, what I enjoyed, getting into, and the kind of books I would like to pick up from a bookshelf of a bookstore. So that was myself, and that's how it kind of grew. It kind of it took its own time, but it kind of grew on me, and I, from reading the textbooks to reading fiction, non-fiction, and various genres that I started to enjoy over a period of time. But certainly, as an educator, my journey has been, has been pretty interesting, and lots of learning that kind of came my way, which I would like to share with all of you. And Yeah, so what is really interesting here is that I started to truly believe that reading for pleasure makes reading for learning an enjoyable experience for a child. It is as important as education, and key to all that is that the parents, educators, and the entire society takes it as a responsibility to ignite love for reading in the children. A child will always need someone to guide them into the right kind of books that can help them to graduate across levels of reading, and that too at their own pace. I think so, I am able to say that because I did not start early, and I feel that, I really needed somebody to guide me into it. And that's how, my experience as an educator has been such that, it always, made me encourage children to, pick up a variety of books to read, right? So just allow me to share the presentation and talk about environmental literature a little bit more. Books for me, they not only build perspectives, opinions, which of course will be based on facts once you begin reading, more and more, but also it opens up a whole new world to the children. So and then not just that, it also helps children to draw connections between what they learn in the school and what they see around them. Our environment indeed is one of the first influencers, that we all have in our life, and nature is an integral part of it. It's easier to get children into reading when it is about things that they see around. They connect with it and begin to love. We have the legacy of our planet, as a great inspiration for all of us when we begin reading, writing. And along with that, there is also an urgent need for humanity to protect it. We don't see many green books on the shelves of the bookstores, that I visited, have ever visited, and that certainly needs a change. For that, and for very long, WWF India has been aspiring to grow this vertical, and we have been coming up with a variety of books. We have developed, quiz books, the Wild Wisdom quiz books. We have biodiversity publications, which are simple handouts that children can carry along when they are on a nature trail. These are simple, easy to, use handbooks. We've also come up with some really interesting picture books for children. We have a lot of activity books. We also have field guides that children can really enjoy, and while they are into nature, and then they can not just discover nature through them, but also connect with them. So here is what you see on the screen is different kinds of publications that we do. We come out with a fortnightly newsletter as well that children can read if you want to subscribe. you can visit our digital resource center called One Planet Academy. Right, so all of this is freely available for children to access, and some of the books are listed on Amazon and a whole lot of other websites. Right, we also have a good list of books which is coming up very soon. We have a lovely book about Nilgiri towers, and it's called Wali's Nilgiri Adventure, which is going to be out very soon. We have also come up with a book about a mystery of not missing plastic. We have, we are coming up with the book on elephants in multiple languages. It's already out in English and Hindi, and very soon the Tamil version will also be available. So we are also trying to reach a wider audience, by getting into, regional languages and various vernaculars. There are two really interesting books which we will be coming up with, and they are The Stamp of Nature. It's a book on philately, about various stamps on nature which have come out in partnership with the Postal Department. There is a very interesting book which will be out next year. It's called Genome Jaunts. It's about various genomic sequence that defines a particular animal or a particular feature in a specific species. It talks about clonal raider ants and all the wonderful species that you may learn about through different mediums. I have, we have been working very closely with teachers across the country, and we reached out to some of the teachers and asked them which book they would like to recommend. And we have little, AVs where they are recommending the books that they would want their children to read. So allow me to play this video and, listen to what our teachers have to say.
Hello, my dear students. Myself, Shivanjani Tyagi, and I'm a biology teacher in Kerala.
Just a moment. I am sharing the sound. Yeah.
Vidyalaya ESC Upper Shillong. As a nature lover and a book lover, I would love to recommend a book for my student, which is named as Fascinating World of Animals and Insects by Padma Rajgopala. This book captured the imagination of children and create an awareness in them to strive to protect all animals and plants. And what I like most in this book, that this book describes without going into lengthy details interesting and fascinating facts about a variety of animals. Thank you and have a nice day.
Yeah, so we had a teacher from Shillong. We kind of work with teachers all across the country. Let us listen to another teacher from another part of the country.
I recommend you a book called Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. This book tells us about the powerful effect humans have on nature. It also documents about the environmentalist effect by the use of pesticides. As we know that when artificiality and humans interfere in the world of nature, it eventually collapses. So it is also rightly said that nature, when left alone, is perfectly balanced. Thank you. So I would recommend you to please go through this book. Thank you and have a nice day.
I'm sure you would all know about Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, one of the front runners when it comes to green literature. We also have a parent who had some thoughts on the kind of green books that their children should pick. So here it is.
Hello everyone. My daughter's name is Neera Hasani and my son's name is Aranya Niranjan. I wish when they grow up they start reading books like My Husband and Other Animals by Janaki Lennon and Voices in the Wilderness by Prerna Singh Bindra, Neha Sinha's Wild and Willful. And by reading these books, I hope they become ambassadors of not just animal conservation, but nature conservation at large. A big thank you to all the organizers of Greenlit Fest and best wishes to all those who will be attending the Greenlit Fest. Thank you.
Okay, not just the parents. We also have a few students who are sharing their favorite books and reading out some excerpts from the book. So let's listen to them.
What happens when you ask an ornithologist, a wildlife photographer, and a doctor duck? They will all perk up and ask, where? Which one? This is a joke shared in the book The Great Indian Nature Trail with Uncle Bicky. It is written by Bijal Vacharajani and illustrated by Rohan Chakravarti. It is packed with information about nature, and it shares that with many comics. And the people in the comics who are Uncle Vicky, who's an ornithologist, and his niece, who's Chunmun, and she's a wildlife photographer, and their dog Dubu. They go on many nature walks all around India. For example, in Karnataka, Sikkim, Uttar Pradesh, and many other places all over India. So each place has its own comic and has its own special animals which are either endangered or are exotic. And in the end of each comic, such as this, there are fun facts, and there are many activities given. For example, there's how to draw sloth bear here, and many facts. And sometimes there's also, if they're endangered, it shows about why they're endangered. So this is the book written by Rohan Chakravarti, written by Bijal Vacharajani and Rohan Chakravarti, and I recommend it to all because it's very interesting. It has many activities and keeps all the readers engaged with the funny and hilarious comics. Hi, my name is Nasir, and I.
Okay, that was Nasir. Let us listen to Adrit now. He has 2 recommendations.
Hello everybody, my name is Adrit. Today I would like to recommend some books that help me like and understand nature. First up is this Encyclopedia of Animals. It gives an overview of vertebrates and invertebrates. I used to read it when I was looking for more general information. But if you would like to see nature in a more scientific way, I would recommend Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. It provides an in-depth understanding of nature, such as how animals, species of animals originated from other species of animals, such as how man's best friend, the dog, originated from the mighty grey wolf, European grey wolf, and also how things that humans do today were actually replicated by less complex animals that existed way before humans. So the best book I could offer you and tell you to read is Nature itself. It says more than what a person could write in a book. There's so much to explore, so much to look at, so much, and even more to explore and discover. Thank you.
Okay, so some really interesting recommendations from Adrit. And sorry, I missed. Yeah, so.
What are you singing? And stop walking immediately. Tammy had been humming a song from this ancient movie that Amni had forced her to see. It was about a nun who begins to take care of some brats and dresses them in silver clothes. Sing loudly so I can hear. Tammy decided the lyrics needed updating to suit her setting. Rubbish and roses and dust motes and kittens, dust flakes that stay on my nose and eyelashes, silver white haziness that stays all along. These are a few of my unfavorite things. So I think I got a gist of what this book means, right? So this book is called A Cloud Called Bura by Bijal Vacharajani. And Bura in Hindi, means that it's bad. So, this book is all about how the climate changes, and in Mumbai the pollution is so much that a big brown cloud takes over the entire place. And it's about how 4 children try to stop climate change from happening in Mumbai. And so there are many people like Motabai, the very powerful politician, and what could he do in this situation. And it's about how two scientists named Vidisha and Vidisha can change the weather because they're powerful scientists, and what could they do in this climate change. And like that there are many scenarios, and there's this actor and there's this powerful cloud sucking machine, and could that suck up Bura? That is something you have to find out. Okay, so this
I recommend this book to everyone. Basically everyone. It's also like how hardworking and endurance power is there in these children.
Yeah, so the a cloud called Bhura is already listed on GLF's long list. So I'm sure each one of you would love to. If you haven't yet read it, you can actually pick up and read the book and discover more. Mr. Singh was supposed to join the event. Unfortunately, he too could not make it, but he has sent a little message for all the children out there and anyone who's watching and listening. Mr. Singh, Ravi Singh is the Secretary General and CEO of WWF India. He is an avid reader himself, and of course he has a huge collection of books in his library, and he has a little message for all of you that I would want you all to listen. So here it is.
Walk into a bookshop and you see that the number of books available from India, there are very few books that are there at different age levels for children. And over the years, over the last 10 years, I have seen this number being populated much more than before. Still, there's a lot of gap. So we have a long way to go, and therefore we need, there is a demand, but we need authors to come up and write about these things and write about their experiences and bring new areas of work and imagination to the core. Those of you who are starting to read or are immersed in the reading, I'd just say that in terms of wildlife and environment, it's actually the fictional part that starts you going, because you try and see things from the eyes of the author who sees it from the eyes of the animal or the wildlife or the elephant or the tiger or the bear. And this leads to other things, and it leads to the fun part of it, occupies your mind, and therefore you are able to be more creative. At the same time, the mind grows, and with this growth of the mind, you start reading more and more. My suggestion to all of you is, and including the authors, is that try and explain things through a journey. Reading a book is a journey in itself, and there are many lessons in this. There are authors who write about travel, and through those books, you are able to actually explore your country, to look at the Himalayas with a new eye, to understand nature and to see your historical monuments and the interaction of nature environment in our history and our tradition. So this aspect, learning through travel, which is by reading more, learning through books that take you to different places, not necessarily only India, learning about subjects that would be difficult for you to otherwise reach and understand outside your school or college curricula. These are important aspects. The example of, I started reading early in my life, and somehow when I think it was in class 4, 5, and 6, the ability to read more started growing in me. And at one time, I remember, I read everything in sight. There were serious books in my house and school, so I couldn't go through them, but whatever was in my level, I read everything in sight. And when they finished and I didn't have any more, I tried to read them again, and I did in certain cases. And that habit has continued till today. I read a lot. I have access to books in the library of the India International Center and in my own office in the WWF. I've collected books over the years, and I can say that there is no end to this journey. And there's no end to the knowledge and the understanding that books inspire and lead you on to better and greater things. A few things I'd just like to talk to you. I think the importance of a person who writes for children, the author, try and learn and understand about him or her. They are very, very conscious understanding people who understand the young mind and are able to, make a productive or contributive aspect in their writing. Ruskin Bond, I remember seeing him several times, in fact, in different events. But he, in one of the largest book fairs in the world in Delhi, he was constantly surrounded by children, and not just for his autograph, but also for the conversation and where he was, talking to them and their teachers and inspiring them to read and to think differently. I'm very happy about this Green Literature Festival. India has so many literature festivals all across the country. This was mentioned by Benedict. And the reason for that is that we are a voracious population as far as readership is concerned. We published over the years, we published great epics, and we've read them. We've read them again and again. And this is like an inner character of my country, and in a way is manifesting itself in the different literature festivals that are there. Then I'd like to just say one thing, and I'm sorry the messages are going out to the elder people or the grown-ups more than the children. I thought that one action from the Green Lit Festival would be to have a living list of books on the environment, wildlife, stories, and nature. A living list, which could be, populated through the year, would have a, there's nowhere you can go to one place where you have this kind of a list available. And some of us, we can have WWF access some of these books and actually have them ready in our different libraries across the country for people to access them. But a list is necessary.
So, Mr. Singh, who has been, the pillar behind, our publications division, it was his vision to start with, this particular vertical as a part of the environment education division, because he believes that, children must get started into reading more and more green books. So coming up next is an interesting quiz that Megha talked about, in the beginning of the session today. So I would want all of you to get ready for the quiz. May I request Megha to read out the responses from the chat box, because I may not be able to access them. So here you go. Are you all ready? Megha, I would just like to know if everyone's ready.
I don't get anybody's responses here, but I suppose they probably would be and ought to be ready. So,
okay. So shall we move on to the first question?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is, we've already been listening a lot about green literature. I hope by now people have begun to understand what green literature means. Here are some of the options. Is it a book? Are these books published on recycled paper? Or is it literature with a focus on nature and the environment? Is it prose and poetry about trees, or literature published with net zero carbon emissions? I would request my audience to put the answers in the chat, and I will wait for a couple of seconds for the answers to start pouring in before Megha picks up the correct one and lets me know.
Right. So, okay. So we have Supriya saying it's B, and Narmada also saying it's B, which is literature with a focus on nature and the end. Oh, okay. Amala is also B. So there's a whole lot of B's coming in for you, Neha. So many of them.
Indeed is the right. Yeah, sorry. That indeed is the right answer, I think. So I'll reveal the answer a little before time. I will be careful with the next one, Megha. I'm sorry.
Sure. So let's get ready for question number 2.
Yes. So the next question, in which year or years were the books featured in the Green Lit Fest Honor List 2021 were published? Your options are 2018 and 19, 2020, 2019-20, or just 2019. Let
Okay,
I
so if
am.
you've been paying close attention to our social media, you ought to know this one. That's a big hint, but yeah. Why don't our audience take a guess on which year were these fabulous books? Narmada says 2018 and 2019.
Okay, let's have
Supriya
some.
says, well, 2019, but she says I'm equivalent to that first row kid in class. Okay, Supriya, thank you for qualifying. Lots of people are saying A, which is 2018 and 2019. Neha, should we give them the answer?
I think so. Let's see what is the correct answer.
Oh,
It's actually
okay.
2019 and 2020.
Oh,
Right,
so
Megha?
yes, so I think this one, none of them got correct.
Yes.
But yes, these are books from 2019 and 2020.
Yes.
Yes, we can go
So,
to the
Megha, next year's honor list will be the publications from which year?
from 2021.
Okay, from 2021. All right. So, cool. The next question. Which of these books on the GLF honor list includes retellings of myths, legends, and folk tales about trees? Your options are Traveling Seeds by Lavanya Karthik, Cities and Canopies, Trees in Indian Cities by Harini Nagendra and Seema Mundoli, Tracing Roots by Malika Ravi Kumar, Aranyaka, Book of the Forest by Amrita Patil and Devdak Patnaik. So
this one's tricky. This one's actually tricky
yes.
because one, I think you've got options from a lot of our lists. Actually, these are from the long list and short list. But yes, we already got answers coming in. Narmada Nayak says it's Tracing Roots. Mahi also says it's Tracing Roots. Shall we wait for one more answer before we do the grand reveal?
Yes.
Anybody else? Okay, I can't see any more answers coming in, so maybe we should just tell them which book it is.
Okay, so the answer is Tracing Roots by Malika Ravi Kumar. Those who haven't read the book should read this book. It's quite an interesting one. And happy reading. Moving on to the next question. Okay, now complete the title of this book about global warming. Your options are The Habitable Earth, The Uninhabitable Earth, The Future of Earth, or The History of Earth.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's either habitable or it is uninhabitable or it's future of or history of.
Yes.
So Amala says B, Saran says A, Supriya says B, Mahi says D. Oh, wow, lots of answers pouring in. Narmada says C. So Neha, maybe I think we have got one right answer so far. That's a hint.
Okay,
maybe we should do that.
Yes. Okay, so the correct answer is The Uninhabitable Earth, Life After Warming by David Wallace Wells. So it's quite an interesting book that you must pick up if you are ready to sort of, explore what may happen in future. So yeah. Okay, now this book is again, listed for the Greenlit Festival this year. What is the name of the book? Your options are A Tigress Called Machli, A Cloud Called Bhura, The Grass Seeker, or The Animal Intimacies.
So if you actually watched yesterday's program, this one should be very easy.
Yep.
So Priya says D. Okay, lots of people saying A.
Okay.
No, yeah, Saransh, Anupama, and Mahi think it's a tigress called Machli. So
Okay.
Priya says it is D. Animal Intimacies. Joanne says it's D.
Okay.
And Saransh says it's C. Narmada says it's D. Okay, so a whole lot of answers coming in.
Okay, so shall we reveal the correct answer?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. We should.
So the correct answer is Animal
Intimacy. It's a fabulous book. So it is in fact, it made our honor. It was one of the books that was honored in yesterday's festival. So please do go and check it out. Yes. Neha, do you have more questions for us? Okay.
Yes, just one last question where you can guess the books you think will make it to GLF WWF India Children's Honor List. I know there is a competition already going on, but I want, as you can see, that the books are numbered from 1 to 10, and you can pick up 5 books that you think will make it to the Children's Honor List, GLF Children's Honor List. So I think so. I will have to give them a couple of seconds to.
Yeah,
Okay.
type in the answers. That's true. Okay, Saransh has already come in. 14865. So Miracle, and then Tracing Roots, and then Making Friends with Snakes, and then 6 is 10 Indian Champions, and then 5 is The Grass Seeker. That's Saransh. Supriya says 10 should. Definitely should. I love it. A Cloud Called Bhura. Joanne says 1, that's Miracle, on Sunderbag Street, The Grass Seeker, Unearthed, An Environmental History, Making Friends with Snakes, and A Cloud Called Bhura.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe we should have I can't.
What we will do is maybe a couple of you should also be. I'm looking at a couple of more responses, so we can tell who made all the guesses right.
Okay. So does anybody else want to take? Okay, Narmada says 1, 3, 4, 7. So Miracle.
Those are 4.
And Gravepire School, and Tracing Roots, and Unearthed. And Nandini says Gravepire School, Tracing Roots. Okay. 6 is 10 Indian Champions, and 9 is A Tigress Called Machli. Mahi says 10 Indian Champions, Gravepire School, Tracing Roots, The Grass Seeker, The Miracle on Sunderbag Street, and Unearthed in Environmental History.
Megha, I would like to make a little announcement here. The first person who guesses all 5 books on the honor list right will get a surprise gift from WWF India.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. So we're going to save the responses in the chat box to see who gets them all right.
Yep.
Okay, Pooja. So, yeah.
Okay, Saransh wants to try again. Saransh has changed.
Okay, no, I think we'll just wait because our panelists, our conversationalists for the next session are ready.
Okay,
so,
all right.
Yeah, I think this was a really fun quiz, Neha. I'm so glad we chose to do this.
Yeah.
But yes, I think that this has been such a fun presentation. Thank you so much, Neha. It was so much fun and it was so engaging. And yes, I think none of us can wait to have the honor books out, which is going to be later in the evening. Yeah. But for now, I want to actually announce our next session, which is a conversation with Nicola, who is an internationally renowned children's writer with so many, many wonderful books set in the natural world. And she's going to be in conversation with Vidya Mani. Now, Vidya needs little introduction, I think, for anybody who belongs to children's publishing in India. She's very well known as a founder member of the traveling bookshop and book consultancy, Funky Rainbow. But she's also one of the finest book minds we have. Vidya was the managing editor of the children's book review site goodbooks.in. She helped to institute the Hindu Young World Good Books Award. And she also runs a content and design studio, Melting Pot, that designs books and magazines for various publishing houses and NGOs. So without much ado, Vidya, I shall hand over the session to you and sound such a I'm really looking forward to this conversation on nature, childhood, and our emotional lives, how literature binds us. So Nicola and Vidya, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Megha. I'm just going to expand my video. I can't seem to see Nicola. Okay, there. Thank you. Thank you so much, Megha. And hello, Nicola. What a pleasure to meet virtually like this. And one day, I hope, in the real world, in the natural world, in the midst of some trees.
Wouldn't that be fabulous?
That would just be lovely. Yeah. But, I want to start by thanking the Green Literature Festival for inviting, Nicola Davies to talk with all of us, because as many of you definitely know, she has some fantastic books on nature for children and middle grade readers. It's a wonderful initiative that the Green Literature Festival has taken to turn the spotlight on the environment. And while we have festivals focusing on different things, a festival on the environment is certainly something that's a must. I think in our world, and especially for the young people. So thank you so much to all of you, to Megha, who has curated the children's segment of this festival. We are eagerly waiting, along with all your viewers, to find out which books make it to the honor list in the children's category in the Green Literature Festival. But before you get there, there's a lot of excitement up ahead, because my guest today is Nicola Davies, the author of over 80 books for children, books of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. Her work has been published in over 10 languages and has, won awards in the UK, in the US, in Italy, in Germany, in France, and I'm sure several other countries. I'm hoping there will be, very soon some awards in India as well. Nicola trained as a zoologist and has a degree in natural sciences from King's College, Cambridge. She then spent a few years working as a field biologist, studying whales, bats, and geese, before she went into the BBC's Natural History unit as a researcher first, and as a presenter to host the Really Wild show. And I can tell you that the shows that Nicola hosted at the Really Wild show are so very popular with young people, because my introduction to her came through a nephew of mine who's now 18 years old, but who told me, about her primarily through the Really Wild show, and then promptly went on to give me a couple of books. Young people always showing us the way. We're here, of course, talking to her today, simply because of these fantastic books that she's written. And I'll begin with my first question for you, Nicola, but if you'd like to say something before I start.
No, it's just lovely to be here. I mean,
just
technology drives us mad sometimes, doesn't it? But when it can do something like this, it's just fabulous.
So I've, I was reading
just
a couple
of... moment, Vidya, actually your face is getting cut off.
Okay.
So can you just adjust your screen a bit?
Is that any
better? There you are.
Yeah.
All right. In glorious, full screen. Thank you, Pooja, for reminding me. I didn't quite look at the screen at all. Nicola, I was just reading some, wonderful interviews of yours that have been published in various websites. And, you said in an interview, I don't remember a time when I wasn't utterly besotted with animals. I spent all my time before I went to school in the garden with my lovely grandpa, looking at flowers, ants, and birds' nests. Clearly, your love for nature and love for the natural world came really early. Why do you think it's important that children have this vital relationship with nature?
I was incredibly lucky that I had access to a garden. And although it wasn't really wild space, there are always little wild bits of gardens, little forgotten corners that aren't quite cultivated. And also my grandfather and my father, although they were great gardeners, were also great naturalists. So they were very enthusiastic about leaving things a little bit wild and uncultivated for nature to do its own thing. The reason that I think it's important for children, well, there are so many reasons. The main two are, first of all, their mental health and development. We are all a product of evolution. We are all a product of natural processes. And in the modern world, it's very easy for children growing up who don't experience nature to see themselves as separate from that. And the consequences of that we can see all around us in big cities, in children's poor mental health, things like ADHD, depression, anxiety. These are things that little kids should not be feeling. And there is a huge, huge, huge and growing wealth of evidence to support the idea that actually contact with nature, and I don't mean just running around playing a sport on a cultivated piece of grass, I mean proper kind of scruffy, muddy, tangly wildness. And it doesn't have to be, massively biodiverse and marvelous in a nature reserve. It can be just a piece of uncultivated wasteland. And what that allows children to do is it allows them to be, and it allows them to imagine. And it develops all sorts of skills and value systems that are completely different from those that develop in for example, a sports orientated playground or, just a concrete playground. So that's one reason. The other reason, of course, is that love of nature is very much passed down from one generation to the next, which means that that culture can be very, very quickly broken. If you have one generation that doesn't grow up with that, then they don't pass it on to their children. Now, understanding the value of the natural world and how we are connected to it is essential to our survival. If we don't get that message and get it fast, we're going down. I don't think anybody with half a brain cell would argue about that. The environmental crisis is now so serious, and we have done such damage to the natural world that if we don't get the message that we're part of it and it's quite important and it's not separate from us, then the consequences are going to be dire, and humanity is at the very least going to go through an extremely dark time. So those messages about our connection with the natural world have never been more important, and the way to get them over most effectively is to expose children to nature from their first moments.
True, so well said. I mean, the interconnectedness of everything, has revealed itself so well to us. I mean, if it hadn't before, the pandemic has certainly made that, sort of. So tell us, I mean, all your books for children, I mean, they just sparkle with a love for creatures, great and small. I mean, there's Hummingbird, and then there's Just Ducks, and then there are those books, illustrated by Emily Sutton, which is lots and many about the diversity of the planet that we live in. And then there are those simple picture books, like a first book of animals, a first book of the sea, a first book of nature. Tell us, tell our viewers about some of your books and why, you want children to become advocates of nature through your books.
Books were my friends when I was a little girl. I was the youngest by a long way. My nearest sibling is 10 years older than me. My parents moved around a lot, so I was always the new girl in school. And as I'm sure you realise, being the new girl is not the best way to make friends. So I was often very solitary. So books and my parents' various gardens were my home and my solace. And I think that's really the two things that have made me into a writer for children. That and the fact that although I look like a 63-year-old woman on the outside, inside I'm 8. There is a core of me that is still absolutely a child. And I think that's what draws me to writing for children and communicating with children and working with children. I really love working with live audiences of children, and I've missed that very, very much during the pandemic. The role that books can play in connecting children with nature is is structuring information within a story. Now, although I write nonfiction, I don't tend to write sort of listy nonfiction books. The vast majority of my nonfiction is narrative nonfiction. And for me, narrative is absolutely, super important. If you think about it, one of the innate traits of humanity, and actually there aren't that very many innate traits. We're pretty flexible as a species, but one of the innate traits of humanity is our storytelling. We absolutely can't help but tell stories. If you go on a shopping trip and you get a puncture on the way home, or something happens, you'll come home and you will structure it into a story. You won't just tell it as a list of events, you'll make it into a story. We all do it all the time, and that's because stories are easy to remember. Stories combine factual information with emotional information, and sometimes spiritual information. Stories communicate with a whole person. They don't just work with heads, they work with heads and hearts and bodies and souls. And that's why communicating about nature through stories is so important, because it helps children who may not have had the experience of, as I was lucky enough to have, of, sitting out in a hedge in the middle of the night when I was little, who haven't had those experiences. It helps them to connect with those things and maybe to seek those experiences out for themselves. And with some of those books that you mentioned, with the first book series, the first book of animals, first book of nature, first book of the sea, my intention with those was not just to communicate very simply and very emotionally with my little readers, but also to remind my adult readers, because of course when you're writing a book for that age group, you're writing for non-readers, which means somebody has to read it to them. So it has to be an older sibling, an adult of some kind, and that reading of a book with a small child is a marvelously sweet, intimate space. And so I was very much imagining that I was communicating with the adult in that space too, and reminding that adult of experiences that they may have had way, way back in their lives, and reminding them of the importance and power of those experiences, so that then they might think, oh, right, I must make sure we do this with the kids tomorrow. We'll go to the woods and we'll kick leaves, or we'll throw pebbles in a pond, or whatever it is. So I was very, very mindful of that. And also with writing picture books, you have this wonderful facility for collaboration with amazing artists, and I have been incredibly lucky to work with fabulous artists in my career. So there's their input too. But as soon as you have that combination of words and pictures, you also know something else, is that they won't just be read once. They will be read and looked at and pored over multiple times. So details in the words, details in the pictures can gradually emerge. And that's why, although I'm currently writing fiction for older children and adults, picture books are an absolutely extraordinary art form with a power to communicate. Well, as you said, translated into many languages, they speak across cultural barriers, across language barriers, across barriers of age, and they are very, very underrated by the literary community. You write a picture book and people say to you, when are you going to write a proper book?
Yeah, what you said is so true. I connected with my nephew. He was much older than your targeted age group when we first picked up a book of yours, but it was Poop. And it was so
right.
delightful. I mean, examining, the nitty-gritties, the details of poop. I mean, that bond that the adult and the child share, the stories that you share, while reading these books. I mean, whether they're books of nonfiction or picture books or books for the littlest of readers. I mean, you're so right that stories really connect to, to the mind, to the heart, to the body.
Yeah. I mean, and one of the things I really, really want to do with my books is I want to invite conversation. I want to invite conversations between the adult and the child who are reading the book together. And also I want to invite conversation between the reader and the material. And what I mean by that is, my role when I write nonfiction, it is absolutely not to tell the whole story, not to kind of download everything that's in my brain on the page. Although that is very tempting at times. My job is to tell my readers enough to make them even more curious, because children are naturally curious, and they're naturally curious, particularly about anything to do with animals. I have a gift of a subject, really. I want them, by the end of the book, to want to know more, to be hungry to know more. And one of the things that I'd very, very much like to encourage, and to give adults the confidence to do. Adults are very much want to be in the situation of being the one who knows. And they're not so comfortable with being in a situation where they don't know things. So what I would like to empower adults to be is to be confident with not knowing, and to say to their child, let's find out together. Because what is more empowering for a child than an adult saying, well, I don't know, should we find out? And in terms of communicating about science, that's a very empirically correct way of representing science, because what you start from is what you don't know. What you start from is the questions. There's a fantastic book written by a very old friend of mine called Viv French. It's a very simple book. It's just called T-Rex, and it has a rhyming refrain. And all the way through this book, the reader is reminded that actually what we know about T-Rex is teeny weeny, but what we don't know. And then at the very end, the reader is invited to be the one to find out. It might be you who finds out the next thing. These are all the things we don't know. It might be you who finds out. And I think in science teaching, that's something that's very, very often forgotten. So important to say to children what we don't know.
Right.
And to say, okay, it's still open. This is go out there and explore, find out.
That's such a lovely, lovely response, really. That brings me to that question. You're a zoologist by training. I mean, you're armed with all these facts on on the creatures, great and small, around us, really, right? So does that make it easier or harder to tell these compelling stories, to invite your readers into wonderful journeys?
Of course, the answer to that is both. You couldn't do it without the knowledge. And I also think you would find it hard to do it without the passion. But then, of course, you wouldn't have acquired the knowledge in the first place if it wasn't for the passion. And yes, sometimes, knowing, particularly when I was starting to write, my very first book is called Big Blue Whale. And I was asked to be scientific consultant on that book before I was asked to write it, because I'd been involved in a study of blue whales in the wild. And I knew entirely too much, really, and I couldn't see at first how to put that information into 600 words. It was just too much. But then I realized that actually what you have is a narrative thread, and what you tell is some of the story, not all of it. And what you need to communicate is the fizz, the buzz, the desire to know more. So it sometimes sometimes my head is so filled with it that it becomes obsessive. I was writing a book called it was about lots of different animals, but the first one in the book was about wolverines. Now, I have had a little bit of an obsession with wolverines since I was small, and read about them in a fantastic American book called Marvels and Mysteries of Our Animal World. And there was a story in there about wolverines in the wild and how troublesome they were to fur trappers and how they break into things and break traps and always escape. And I love this idea of an animal that just always got the better of people. And I researched about them, and I spoke to wolverine researchers, and I had all this stuff going around in my head. And I started ringing up my son, driving him completely mad, to say, "Hey, Joes, I gotta tell you this one thing about wolverine, okay?" I think he stopped taking my calls in the end,
I can well imagine that situation, but well, that book, that's something that I'm certainly going to pick up and read next. I mean, all the excitement.
It's called Animals Behaving Badly.
Animals Behaving Badly.
It's a little tiny, skinny book, and it didn't do terribly well, unfortunately. I think I don't know, they didn't market it or something, but it was such fun to write, finding out all these ways in which various species have got the better of, including macaques in India, absolutely putting paid to, I can't remember the name of the city now, but there was a city where the city said, okay, we're going to make sure that everybody has Wi-Fi access. And, huge civic pride, everybody clapping, probably a lot of money changing hands. And they laid out the wires, but they didn't put them underground. They just kind of put them, well, you know what I'm going to say next. So new wires in a macaque's environment. Oh, this is nice. Is this edible? Shall we try it and see if it's edible? And they just completely destroyed it. Millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of money expended, completely undermined by one of our closest relatives. Wonderful. I mean, disastrous, but also fantastic.
It's most probably my city, Bangalore, which is the IT
I think capital. It might well have been Bangalore, actually.
Oh, well, I'm so glad for those macaques, really, right? But your latest one, Nicola, the new one, the song that sings us, I mean, you've made a move to the longer format of fiction.
Well, it is fat. Look, you can have the door open with it. But it has got, I must just say something about the lovely cover. I now live in part of the UK. I live in Wales, in Pembrokeshire in Wales, which is a very, very far west. You go only further west and you're halfway to New York. And out through that window, there's a hill you can't see, where my friend, lovely Jackie Morris lives. And it's her beautiful starling that's on the cover, making this book look so gorgeous. So it may seem like a kind of slightly crazy departure to suddenly write a fantasy novel at this stage in my career. But what I wanted to do is that I wanted to address the environmental crisis, particularly the climate crisis, very directly, emotionally. Now, there is a minefield around doing that in nonfiction at the moment. I'm currently having a battle with a UK publisher about a non-fiction title that I've written that I have been asked to water down because of its climate change content.
They don't want you to tell it like it is?
They don't want
Is that what it is?
Like it is. However, if you write about a fantasy world, you can say whatever you want to say, and nobody can dispute it. So that's the reason why I turned to a fantasy world, because it allowed me to set things up so that my readers would sit in this fantasy world that I've created and then look back at the real world and reflect. So the message of the book is very much about connection, but also about hope. very, very, very much about hope. You know, I think that's one of the most things that I find, I'm sure you do, I'm sure we all do, find most frustrating about the climate crisis. It's not unsolvable. You know, if it was unsolvable, I'd say, okay, let's just all drink the gin, shall we? Until the world ends and have a lovely time. And that would be a perfectly valid response. But it's solvable. For goodness sake, we can do this. We've just got to get our act together. And really, that's the message of the song that sings us. But I also wanted to write something that was really, really exciting.
Yes, it really is.
So it was great fun to write a kind of environmental thriller, really, with these three children at the heart of it. One of my other motivations in writing it was that I've been really lucky. I've had quite a lot of kind of adventures in the wild. You know, I've camped in weird and wonderful places and worked on small boats and sailed across oceans and all that kind of thing. And those have been some of the most marvelous experiences of my life, you know, not dependent on fashion or Instagram or what I was wearing or how much I was earning or what anybody thought of me, but just being alive and in the world. And I really wanted to put that kind of thing in this book so that children will perhaps be motivated to seek out those experiences for themselves and kind of reject the materialism which actually has done none of us any good. It's not served anybody well, not even really the people at the very, very top of the tree who are making the most money out of it. You know, I doubt that they're any happier than the rest of us. So that was my motivation in writing it. And I wrote it in over last winter. And I read it episodically to my friend Jackie and my other friend Kathy Fisher, who's also an illustrator, who was down here. And we were all in the same bubble during our COVID lockdown. And I'm absolutely delighted to say that I'm now writing the prequel to this book. And next year I'll start to write the third and final book in the trilogy.
Oh, wow. That is, yes. I mean, the book is, you turn a page, a second kind of book. It's got that excitement, which I think kids will really love, right? And yet it's so lyrical. I mean, and that thing, the interconnectedness of the universe and nature, the fact that nature is so kind to us. I mean, it's just such a wonderful read. I mean, I sent you mail and I said, I managed to sneak a copy from a friend who was traveling in, and it was just absolutely unputdownable. I can see some, writers, especially writers who've done climate change in India, saying they really would like to read the book, and I hope it comes to us very, very soon.
Oh, do you know, I'd love to get a copy to Arunima Ghosh. We follow each other on Twitter. Okay. And very occasionally, to my huge heart-beating excitement, he'll retweet something of mine. But I'm a great admirer of his writing. And I'd absolutely love him to read. It would be wonderful if it came out in India. I'd be totally, totally delighted.
We'll ask. His book was on the honor list, in the Green Literature Festival when they announced the book's out for adults yesterday. So we'll bring a copy and we'll make sure it's sent to him so your heart can beat.
Oh, thank you so much. Do send my love and admiration. I think he's marvelous.
But tell me, Nicola, before we open the stage up to questions, I mean, if a child has her nose in a book all the time, is that conducive to looking out of the window and appreciating nature? I mean, what would you tell parents and, children, a lot of whom are watching you this evening?
That's a really tricky one, isn't it? Because I had my nose in a book an awful lot of the time, but I also spent a lot of time outside. I don't think there's a hard and fast answer to that. Right. All I would say is, your child. And remember that I would say staring out the window and appearing to not do very much are not things that you need to worry about. I think we're very, very keen nowadays to try and fill our kids' time with this. And I think absolutely nothing time is very good, because your brain has got to have space to breathe. Yes. The one thing that does worry me is screens. I mean, I know parents are really worried about this now, and I'm lucky that my children just missed it, really. My kids are in their early 30s, so the screen stuff hadn't really happened when they were little. But I very, very often see in the UK pre-speech children, babies, with a screen.
Oh.
And that's the first thing they learn to do.
Yes.
And I worry about that. You know, I don't want to be a Luddite about technology, but I do worry about that. And I do worry about what that does to hand-eye coordination,
yes,
visual processing, and brain development.
Yes, absolutely.
Get your kids outside as much as you can and do things with them. Because they, especially when they're little, if mummy and daddy, or whoever happens to be the person, the adult in charge, is doing something, your kid is going to want to do it with you.
That's right.
So if you're looking at leaves and saying, wow, look at this ant, then they will be excited by it too.
And absolutely, get them under a tree, maybe to sit down and read a book. Read with them.
In India, the wildlife you have in India, oh my goodness me. You've got all that absolute gorgeousness.
Yes. Huge natural heritage here in India.
Huge natural heritage, and fabulous biodiversity, and kind of really, really, really exciting things. I mean, you've got hornbills in India, for goodness sake. My favorite things in all the world.
So yes, I mean, you have it from her, take your kids out, look at the leaves, look at the ants, look at the trees, just look at the beautiful world around you.
Yeah, and the tiniest details,
yes.
The colors. When I was at university, I grew up in the countryside, and then when I went to university, I was in a town. Cambridge isn't a big town, and it's very, very green and it's very lovely. But I can remember going into London to visit friends, and going into Liverpool Street Station, which is a bit better now, but back in the 80s, it was pretty dismal, Liverpool Street Station. And you go into Liverpool Street Station, and I can remember the train always used to stop at this particularly bleak place where it was just walls and dirt and rubbish blowing around it. And there was a buddleia, which is but buddleia with the purple flowers. There was a buddleia, this little stick of buddleia growing out of the brick in the wall. And look for that. Because even if you were in a city, there will be some valiant living thing pushing its way up between the concrete. There's a fantastic Sylvia Plath poem about mushrooms, about mushrooms pushing their way through the concrete. It's, life, nature isn't spiteful. It's not judgmental. It's not going to sulk. It's not going to say, well, you humans have been so horrible to us for a really long time, we're not going to grow. No, you give it the slightest opportunity and it's going to flourish. And of course, that's the message. That's the act of nature's friendship that is going to help us out of climate change, if only we will allow it to happen.
Really, I mean, your enthusiasm's infectious, says one of our participants. And, we really, I think all of us need to be out, need to be in the midst of nature. Before we, open up to some questions, just one quick thing. I know you said you can screech like Gollum. In one interview, you said you stopped doing the BBC show because the pressure was really high and you wanted to spend a lot of time with your kids, and you could keep them really entertained. One of them being to screech like Gollum from The Lord of the Rings. Can we ask?
No, I can't. I've got to work up to it. I can't remember. It's been so long, I can't even remember how I could do it. But it's funny enough, I rewatched Lord of the Rings, the movie, the other day, and it reminded me about how wonderful, how much I loved those books as a child. So I think my treat when I finish this next novel is going to be, I'm going to reread the whole lot.
And you'll come back.
And I'll come back and then I'll do it for you.
Yes, for us, like Gollum.
Yeah.
But yes, if there are any questions, I'm Megha, do you want me to take a look at those ones?
Yeah, sure. You just pick some, that's fine.
So I don't see very many, I see a lot of people who are absolutely in love with you, Nicola.
Yes.
And with your infectious
Yeah, but they've got to ask questions, come on.
While we wait for some questions to come up, can you see, do you want me to scroll up and take a look at some of the comments?
Sure.
Well, we have Bijal Vajrajani, who's written, climate fiction in India and whose book is on the shortlist, saying, please bring us the song that sings, the song that sings us to India. We can't wait to read it, Nicola. We really want our kids to read this book. And I think she's speaking for herself too. Another one says, Nicola's infectious enthusiasm has made my day, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. Narmada says, I think I'm not the only one that must be grinning through this conversation, but indeed, thank you for so many, wonderful bits and bytes of information for that compelling, argument for why we must be in the midst of nature and perhaps not in front of our gadgets.
Yes.
If there are, of course, there's Anupama who's writing and saying, I'm an engineer by profession, but I spend most of my time watching bugs or birds around me with my kids. Most of my stories include a lot of, I'm sorry, that question just zoomed up somewhere. Hang on. Most of my stories include a lot of creatures, but they have all been rejected till now. Does the profession matter when it comes to stories? Just for curiosity that I'm asking you this question. I'm so motivated by your talk.
Okay, that experience of having things rejected is universal amongst writers. And when it comes to writing about animals, the species that the publishing industry will allow you to write about, it's quite limited. I have had all sorts of things turned down for all sorts of weird reasons. Sometimes, it's almost like a cultural appropriation reason. I wanted to write a book about kangaroos. No, I wasn't allowed to write that because I'm not Australian. I wanted to write a book about jackdaws and rooks, which are European species. No, can't do that because we won't sell it in America because they don't have jackdaws and rooks in America. So all sorts of really, really frustrating reasons. I just recently pitched a book about sturgeon, these really, really enormous fish, which used to be in all temperate river systems. And actually there's a project starting now to restore sturgeon to one of the river systems in the UK. And that was turned down because, only rich people care about sturgeon because that's what you get caviar from. So if your books are turned down, take a deep breath and keep going. That's all I can say. It is massively frustrating, and sometimes the stupidity of the publishing industry is enough to make you scream. Go out into the garden, have a good old scream, and come back and get on with it.
Lovely response. One of our viewers says, can you tell us a little bit about the title of the book, that song that sings us? It's such a crucial part of the book.
So this is a long answer. One of my very first jobs while I was still a student at university was studying humpback whales. I was lucky enough to go to Canada and I spent 2 summers studying humpback feeding behaviour off the coast of Newfoundland. But I had already heard recordings of humpback whale song. And I very, very much wanted to hear it in the wild. Well, it took me 37 years to get to hear humpbacks in the wild. And I was working with the same scientist, with the same scientific team, 37 years later, actually on sperm whales in the Caribbean. And I was out on deck on this little boat in the middle of the night with a hydrophone in the water, listening to sperm whale click. So there's a whole load of bonkers ticking clocks underneath the boat. And through that sound, I heard humpback song for the first time in my life. And it was worth every second of that 37-year wait. It was absolutely wonderful. But song and song structure is something that really fascinates me. If you speed humpback song up, it sounds like a bird. If you slow a bird song down, it sounds like a whale.
Oh,
so there are universal structures that run through song of all sorts, and also structures that we can recognize. One of the very first people to study humpback song was a woman called Katie Payne, who had trained as a classical musician. She looked at the sonograms, the visual representations of humpback sounds that were lying on her husband, Roger Payne, a very famous biologist, on his desk, and she said, that's song. And she subsequently went on to discover infrasound communication in elephants. So this idea of there being a song that runs through everything actually became the kind of guiding heart thread that ran through the whole narrative in the song that sings us. And I won't say any more about it because it's a plot spoiler if I tell you any more.
But it's true. It's while at one end it's such an exciting page turner, it's also one of the most lyrical books you can pick up and read. That's the song that really sings us in Nicola's newest one. One more comment that says, your allusion to Sylvia Plath is a thoughtful reminder to nurture tolerance and space for nature. I think we've Megha, terribly overshot our time. I'm really sorry.
We just completely enjoyed having you and Nicola in conversation. I think, Nicola, to everybody here who was sort of unfamiliar with your work, everyone's so excited about the things that you've said. And, they resonate. Sometimes we just need people to give us those little reminders as adults about the things we feel and the things children's literature, by reading children's literature, we can ease out a bit. I've been working in children's publishing for 12 years now. And I think the reason I will probably be a grand old lady working in children's publishing would be because I think it just keeps you it helps you to preserve that little bit of childhood inside you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Keep something, I don't know, almost untainted.
Yes.
So I just want to hold on to that forever. I want to probably die with it.
You will. I'm sure you will. I'm sure you absolutely will. And before, I know we have to go, I know we've overshot. I just want to say one thing before we go, because I've so appreciated talking to you and so appreciate the fact that my books are read and loved by people so very, very far away. That means a great deal to me. So I just want to teach you a Welsh word. Okay. Now, I don't speak Welsh, although my parents were both Welsh speakers, but there is a very important little Welsh word, and it is cwtch. Okay. Cwtch. Now, cwtch means a hug, but it means more than a hug. It can be a verb or it can be a noun. You can be in a cwtch with someone, or you can give someone a cwtch. So I am now holding you all in a big cwtch. And sending you a cwtch all the way from Wales to India. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. We send back tons of cwtches to you.
Yes.
We'll never forget the word. And we'll have your books in a cwtch always, Nicola Davies. Thank you for that fantastic conversation with all of us this evening.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. I can't thank Vidya and Nicola enough for that conversation. It was just so heartwarming, I think is the right word for it. But yes, now we have a panel discussion that I have been very excited about. And I'm going to not waste much time. This is a panel discussion with for very young, very promising people. I'm going to introduce the panel moderator, Tamanna Sengupta. Tamanna is all of 23. She is an enthusiastic environmentalist. She graduated in environmental science and management from the University of York. And one of Tamanna's abiding passions is unraveling climate change for the wider public so that they can demand appropriate action from the authorities. Now, if you haven't already, do check out Tamanna's Instagram handle @itsme_Tamanna, where you can get a glimpse of the interesting work that Tamanna does in trying to deconstruct climate change headlines for the average reader. So Tamanna, and to the rest of the kids, I hope this is, I'm sure this is going to be a very interesting conversation on the role of green literature in their lives. I should also tell you, all the children on this panel were also part of our jury, and Tamanna was part of our jury advisors. So thank you, and I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Megha, and thank you for having me here at Green Lit Fest. I'm very excited. I'm going to introduce our panelists today, and as I introduce you, I request you to turn your camera on as well. First, we have Arunima Ghosh. She is 9 years old. She is a student at Aga Khan Academy, Hyderabad. She loves music, art, reading, writing, and playing with her pup Jasmine. Thank you for coming here today, Arunima. We then have 12-year-old Raghavan Balaji. He's a student at Bombay International School. He loves to discover the how and why of the world and dreams of becoming an inventor someday. He also enjoys reading, Minecraft, and long swims. And then lastly, we have 14-year-old Celesta Fernandez. She lives in Goa and studies at Sharda Mandir School. She loves to read and write stories. Thank you so much for joining us, Arunima, Celesta, and Raghavan. So today we're going to discuss about the role of green literature in our lives, right? And before I start the panel, I want to start off with a question. All three of you have mentioned that you love reading. So what is it exactly about reading that you love? Why do you enjoy reading? And I'll start with Arunima.
Okay, yes, so I love reading fictional books because of the fantasy in them, and there are a lot of illustrations in those books. So that makes me a lot more interested in reading fictional books. And I also like comic books because a few of the comic books I've read are very humorous, and that's what makes me very interested in reading comic books and fictional books. So, yeah.
Thanks, Arunima. How about you, Raghavan? Why do you like reading?
I mean, this may sound like a cat poster, but so reading literally takes you into another world. So if anything bad happens, you can just go into it and forget about it. Every time I read a good book, I always forget about the bad thing that happened before. And sometimes I don't even read just to elevate bad things. I read because, well, it's just fun to read. Every single book gives you a different world. You have the ability to imagine anything you want in any book. And that is what appeals to me.
That's so true. Reading removes all of the boundaries that the real world puts around us. How about you, Celesta?
Well, for me, I didn't really have the opportunity to explore libraries from my schools because till the sixth, I had never been into a library. My schools didn't have them. And in the sixth, I came to where I'm staying right now, and I finally entered a library. And for a period of time, I refused to read books without pictures because I found them very bland and boring. But then one of my friends told me, why do you not like books without pictures? They are so much better because you can imagine the characters, the stories, the places around them described however you want to. There is no limit to it. And I think that's what I later on found and learned that it's really, really interesting that this one character, that small description can be implemented in like 50 different ways if necessary. And that's what really kept me going and reading books. So yeah, I really do love exploring, love imagining. It's really nice.
Yeah, I think I agree. For me, it was once I started reading, I realized that there's no end to how much you can explore when it comes to reading, and that's really appealed to me. You also mentioned that you didn't start from reading at the library in school. So coming to that, do you have something related to environmental education being taught at school, and do you enjoy it? I'll start with Celesta.
I think we had environmental studies instead of science for a while, but after that, I don't think I have been like, there was GK and environmental studies, but at one point of time, that too they stopped and they started focusing on the mainstream subjects and the main parts of science. So like till then, till what I learned during them, that was all I had towards environment. And then they introduced science, and science is so much more, like it's much more complex than just learning about the environment. So yeah.
And just to follow up to that, when you were reading the books in our long list, did you feel like the green literature, fiction or non-fiction, is helping you understand more than the environmental education at school?
Yes, I actually, when I was reading these books, I was really fascinated because I never knew there was like so much. I really didn't know, and I wish I was taught all about this, and in school especially, and people around me knew too, and they told me about this. But in school they teach the same things over and over again, is one thing I noticed. The same chapters again and again and again. So it's like they could have taught us so much more, but they kept it so constrained.
Yeah, that brings us back to how books can like go across all the boundaries that we set, right? Um, I'll come to Arunima next. Do you enjoy environmental education being taught at school? And do you think that reading books, green literature, helps you learn more than what is taught at school?
Yes. So I feel in our school we basically learned about sustainability, and in that unit we learned about multiple things. We learned about deforestation, we learned about air pollution, noise pollution, sea pollution. So I found that it was very interesting. And second is that yes, reading green literature helps me understand a lot more than what is taught at school, because there are illustrations, and that makes you understand better, because when there's illustrations you can, instead of just reading the text, you can easily make out what the text is trying to say by looking at the illustrations. So yeah.
Yeah. And Raghav, coming to you, what about you? Do you enjoy environmental education at school? Do you think you've learned more through books?
I mean, I don't think I've learned a lot more through books, but I wouldn't say environmental education is useless, but it's pretty close. Because see, in school, most students take an innate hating towards school, so they will take a hating towards all types of subjects. Even if they would have originally enjoyed it if it wasn't taught in school, they would always they would hate it if it was taught in school because they hate school. Books, however, most people don't have a bias towards books. So I don't think it would be able to convey information better and have a bigger chance of getting someone interested. And sometimes there are different types of environmental books. Some of them are just like straight up giving you facts. There are not that many people who enjoy it, but if you need actual information, it's the best to go. The second ones are books like Unearthed. They are books that convey all the information in factual books with some witty sense and humor. They always have a way to keep you interested. So two examples are Unearthed and Ugly Bugs and Nasty Nature by Horrible Sense and Megha Gupta.
Yeah, I remember Horrible Science brings up a lot of my memories from reading it during school. So, yeah, thank you for that. And you mentioned very correctly that there are different kinds of books and different kinds of audiences that like those books. So, coming to that, do you think that books on all of these topics, animals, saving animals, protecting the environment, climate change, or even biographies of people who are working towards protecting our planet, do you think that books like these are successful in raising awareness among children about these topics? And I'll start with you, Raghav, since you brought that up.
Yes, I think most books that actually mention it will spark up an audience, but most books shouldn't really mention it just in passing. So you may not know this, but I wrote a few, like say 300 400 word books, but in those books I made it so that the main issue was a climate change related problem. It even may be a fantasy story, like the first book I wrote. It was about this water breathing dragon that was trying to save people from a fire. So I made like several books of the series. But in the second one, the problem was that the coral reefs were getting destroyed and dragons were moving out of their habitat. So it mentions the problem and you get to focus on it. It actually stays in your head because it's a main problem. Books like Grappas, on the other hand, are doing almost the same thing. They are giving you the fantasy. It's a good book in bookwise. But if you want to learn about the environment or make someone aware, it's not a great book. It does have, I would say it has environmental content in this, like the river drying up. But because of the fantasy, they forget about it. They mostly focus on all the things that are there, like them being dead, also animals, many types of animals, and much more like that. You kind of lose sight of the actual climate change problem. Books like Cloud Called Buddha, on the other hand, also have the same type of storyline, except they actually make you focus on the problem because you can't go three words in the book without encountering it anyways. So the book actually makes you focus on the problem. It makes you realize what is going on, and the book also shows children making change, how you can fix the problem. So I would say this book is very ideal for environmental change.
True. So, from what you're saying, what I'm understanding is that some books are good for you to read and understand what the story is telling you, while some books talk about a larger problem that stays in your mind long after you've read the book, making you more inclined to learn more. So, Arunima, what do you think? Do you agree with Raghav, and do you agree with the fact that books on important topics make you learn more or make you more aware of problems that are going on?
Yes, I completely agree because, uh, but whatever Raghu said is true. Some books have the same storyline, but they do focus on the topic, but uh, the language and everything else in the book make the story, make the reader's mind divert into something else. They don't quite focus on what the book is mainly written on about. But books like Adventures of the Humongous Family uh, are like on the topic. They are good. They talk about different things, but at the same time, they make it easy to learn, and it even is about about the environment. So
Right.
yeah, I very much agree to what Raghav said.
Okay, I'll move to Celesta next and just a request for the upcoming questions. Let's not get too specific about the books in particular. We'll talk more in broad about green literature and the long list. So, Celesta, coming to you, do you think that such books on these issues, they help you gain more awareness about real world issues?
Yeah, they do, because like I said in the beginning, there was so much in there that I really did not know about, that I had no way of knowing about until I read them. And it's like Raghavan said, some books, they write about stuff, but they're just ignored. They write about the environment, but we just feel like when we read them, we just ignore the tiny details. So like we mull on them for a second and then just move on to the next chapter where something exciting has happened. So it's like books that mainly tell us about the stories of environment and animals and much more. They really do bring us the awareness of how they have lived life and how their life is changing because of us, and how we should be actually trying to help them and how we have harmed them. So yeah, um, green literature really does help in bringing awareness to a lot of issues. And it's also one of the most fast ways of spreading awareness.
That's very true. And I also feel like green literature is written in a way where you don't have to be of a certain age or have a certain level of knowledge to understand what they're saying, right? Coming to that, have you, all of you have read most of our books from the long list for children? Have you read any environment themed books before this, or aside from books that were in the long list, have you come across books that focus on these issues before? I will start with Arunima.
Yes, I've come across a lot of books that mainly focus on climate change, the environment, and I've also read books that are about the environment, like a few encyclopedias. So, yeah, I have come across books that talk about the environment and climate change.
How about you, Raghav?
Yes.
Have you come across books talking about environment or climate change before you came across the long list for GLF?
Yes, I have this. I came across Unearthed and Me and Marvin Gardens.
Mhm.
Unearthed I've already explained in detail, and I won't bore you with more details. I think I've rambled for long enough. And I also remember I have this book. This book and the whole trilogy.
Oh, what's the name of that book?
Oh, it's Dennis the Dodo.
Right. And Celesta, how about you? Have you read any of these theme books before?
I have read books with environmental theme, but it's like they were all short stories and stuff. You like they come as a collection. Not all of them speak about environmental, and not all of them speak about animals or such. Some of them speak about fantasy. Some of them speak about different topics altogether. So it's like most of them I read when I was really young, so I don't remember. But yeah, I've read a couple of horrible science magazines and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I think horrible science really leaves an impact, right? With the way the drawings and the way they write things. And so, yeah, coming to that, we discussed how there are different kinds of books. At the beginning, Arunima even mentioned that she sometimes prefers comics or picture books, things like that. So, broadly, we have fiction or non-fiction, right? If you were to just look at two aspects of it. So, these are real world issues. They're happening out there right now. We're living it. So when it comes to things like this, do you prefer them being told to you in a fictional story or in a non-fictional story, or do you think it doesn't really matter? And I'll start with Celesta.
Honestly, for some of them, I think it would be better to be written in a fictional way, or and some of them better to be straight out given in fact. But honestly, more importantly, it kind of depends on the age group of the person you're trying to convey the story to. So it's like if I was younger, I would just ignore what is being said if it wasn't in a fictional way, because I catch details of it, but at the same time, it would just be too plain for me. But if it was written in a fictional way, it would be really interesting to see and to learn and to fantasize about. So overall, it depends on the person you are conveying your story to, the age group, and the likes and dislikes.
Right. And then again, that conflict of not making it so much a fantasy that you forget that it's a real world issue. Coming to Raghav, do you think, what do you prefer, fiction or non-fiction when it comes to these issues?
Me, I honestly don't know. There are so many different ways and so many different books I've read. Each one portrays it in fiction and non-fiction, and so many of them always have a really good way of portraying it. Like the two most contrasting ways I've found are Unearthed and Me and Marvin Gardens. See, so this is a fiction book that is written in a very fantasy way. Like it's literally a crossbreed between a pig and a dog, and a lot of other things I don't know. And so it is a fantasy story, but it tells you a lot about the environment. It also shows you that it also has a pig that eats plastic, which is something that helps climate change. But it also tells you a lot about the environment. And this is fiction, of course, but it tells you a lot about the animals. It's not like this, which is one conducive story. This one is many different stories and about many different animals. It tells you about a lot of them in a short story, and it tells you a lot of information about them.
Right. So combining what we've heard till now, Celesta says that your audience matters, who is reading your book and how well they can connect with it. And for Raghav, it also matters how you're putting the story forward, right? What characters and what kind of storyline you're using. Arunima, do you have something to add to that, or do you have a preference, fiction, non-fiction?
Yeah, I would mostly prefer fictional because a fictional book about a real life situation would make me feel more imaginative and it will help me visualize. Just like No Nonsense Nandini. It's based on a true story and it gives information about the farmer problems farmers are facing, but it is written in a very creative and fictional way, which makes me very interested in the book. So, yeah, I mostly prefer fictional.
Right. For me, I guess I would agree with Celesta and all of you actually. For me, it depends on what the book is trying to convey. Like maybe a book like No Nonsense Nandini, I would prefer it to be more non-fictional. But when it comes to like a story, a fantasy story about how you're saving the world from a crisis, then fiction is definitely better. Coming to from then, I'm sorry for my dog in the background, by the way. From all of the books that you read in for GLF from the long list, without naming any book, we don't want to give out anything. So without naming a book, what are some broad lessons that you learned from it? About whatever the book was talking about, whether it's for animals, environment, how children can save the planet, anything. What are some broad lessons that you learned? I'll start with Raghav.
So some broad things I've learned is that are you talking about environmentally or story?
From an environmental aspect, something that you took away from that about the problem.
So as Celesta has said, audience definitely does matter. So if you're giving a book like this to an older audience, they won't find it as helpful. Whereas if you give a book like this to a younger audience, they'll understand not a single thing. So you need to like categorize the books in a way that people can understand. So books like these take a little bit of meaning. You need to ponder a little bit about it to find some references. Even I didn't understand some of the things in these books until my mom told me about them. And she told me they were obvious, and I have a small brain. But, anyways, so sometimes books can have hidden meanings, and the easier they are to find, the younger audience you can give them to. And there are different books that don't even have hidden meanings, like this. It always tells you, and there are many different ways to tell a story. One is like a picture book like this, as someone in the world has said, a picture says 1,000 words. So, like, when you have really good pictures, it'll immerse you in the book, even though it's only like 3-4 pages.
And did any of these books give you a sense of hope? Like maybe as a child, I have the power to make change, make a difference in the world. Did it give you some sort of
Yes.
hope?
So, Cloud Called Bhura is one of those books that give you hope, which it shows you that children can change the tide of a problem. They show you how they do it, in what way they do it, and how you can do it. Also, the second book is Miracle on Sundarbag Street, because they transformed a wasteland to a nice park, and a child was the one who initiated it all. And
Right.
this is also real, so it gives you even more hope than a fictional one, because you know it has happened, and it could happen very soon.
Which is a good connect to the last question, right? Coming to Arunima, what are some lessons that the books taught you, if anything, and do you think it gave you a sense of hope for the future?
Yes, green literature has made me more aware of the environmental issues around the world. And reading green literature made me feel a lot more sensitive towards the environment. And moreover, green literature has made me feel as if the environment is my friend. And I now have deeper feelings for the environment. And I feel sad when I see people polluting the air, water, and environment. Reading green literature made me has completely has made me transform. Like it has completely transformed me into a new person who now has feelings for the environment. So yeah.
And did any of the stories amaze you? Maybe about there are some stories about folk stories, right? About tigers and crocodiles and things like that. Or you learn about how Mumbai, for example, was once filled with vultures, and then over time they disappeared. So did things like that amaze you about how much the world around you has changed? Something you haven't seen yet, used to exist at one point of time. I'll ask you, Arunima.
Yes. Can you please repeat the question again?
Yeah, did the any of the books how they sometimes illustrate how much the world has changed right now? Like at one point it was much more greener, cleaner, safer, more filled with animals and birds around us. Does it amaze you that it's changed so much that nowadays we're mostly surrounded by concrete and less of greenery?
Yes, it does. It does. It amazes me so much that earlier how we how we shared our how we shared our environment with the animals, but now we just think all the space, the everything around us is only ours. Nothing is for animals, and I'm just shocked how we can become into such sensitive souls and not think and care about the animals. So
That's an important point. How we think that all of this space just belongs to us and we can do whatever we want with it. I'll come to you next, Celesta. What are some broad lessons that the books have taught you?
Well, for me, what I learned the most was about animals. And like she said, most of the people think that the whole planet is only for us, but that's not true at all. And like we should start trying to stop monopolizing land and trying to give the animals at least a little bit of space to live their life, because most animals have gone into extinction because the places they once called home, they can no longer call home because they were taken away from them. And it's like there was this one place near my previous house. It was like a whole forest area. There were tons of monkeys and tons of birds always flying around. We'd go pick jamuns and everything with the whole family together. We'd walk through the forest and like pick jamuns and everything. But like recently, just a few months after we left, there was a house that was under construction that got built, and there's currently only one house over there, but they have cut almost all of the trees there. It was full and bushy, and now you can literally see only the thin trees that barely have leaves on them that are still standing. And that was quite sad. So it's like there were so many monkeys there eating the mangoes, there were so many birds, insects, and everything, and I can't see any of them now because it's all gone.
Right. Again, that point of how fast things have changed now, right? And because you mentioned these things in such detail, and all of you said that you feel a different connect with nature after reading these books. But a lot of the problems that have come up right now, they've been caused by adults, right? We were children when they were happening. So, do you think that these books, like they've changed your view of, or they've connected you more with nature? Do you think that there's a chance that it can do the same for adults? And the adults right there, like me, the adults who are right now entering the adult world, do you think it can help us also change our mindset to make the world a better place? And or do you think that it's mostly up to the children right now? So I'll start with Celesta.
Well, actually, there are tons of adults helping, but at the same time, it's very sad because there are tons of adults who know what's happening, and they're like, by the time stuff starts actually going down, like everything starts depleting like crazy, we won't be there anymore. But it's sad because we will, and like at that time, we will be adults. So lots of people think that it's none of their business because they can just live their life right now, but they're disregarding the future generations and the lives they want to live. um I think that we can do a lot, so can the adults, and they really need to, some of them really need to change their mindsets. First, there are lots of simple things that need to be brought about to start change, like plastic bottles, how to recycle them. And plastic bottles, in for the first place, their caps were meant to be put inside the bottle and crushed, but nobody does that because nobody knew. It's only in one video where a police officer actually brought it to awareness in India that I found out that this is supposed to be done. I didn't know there was so much we could have done better already, but people just disregard it because they think it's none of their business and it's you know too much to do. They're too lazy to do. And that we can, as children, at this point, we need to stop just thinking leave it to the adults. Even if they say leave it to them, we also need to start doing stuff. We can't rely on the adults itself. So we can also do small things like bring about awareness to our friends, start planting small plants wherever we can, fill the house with a bit of greenery, and small things like that. It doesn't matter how small, but we can do stuff. Just recently we came to the topic of environment with my friends, and leaves are burnt everywhere after collection in India, in lots of places. And as a kid, I really didn't know that this was bad. I just thought it's something everybody does, it's normal. But now I've realized that smoke is so harmful to the environment, and that our environment is deteriorating because of that one pile of leaves that were being burnt, because nobody tried to stop it. Everybody thought it was normal. When I asked a family member of mine at that time, they just told that smoke of leaves, burnt leaves, is not harmful to the environment. And honestly, at that time, I was like, oh, this is something I never knew. I thought all smoke is harmful. Later on, I learned more and I realized that was not true at all. Smoke is really harmful no matter where it comes from, because it's still smoke. So we can bring about a lot of awareness, change the mindsets of adults, try and help them and us to make some change, so that at least little bit of harm is reduced, because it'll take time. There is a lot we have to do, but if we start from the small things, it'll get better and better and better.
I think you raised some very important points, and I especially like that point of adults need to realize that they're saving the world for their children, not necessarily for themselves, and they need to come from that space, right? Raghav, what do you think? Do you think that it's only up to the children, or do you think it's a joint effort, or do you think the adults need to take on more
It
responsibility than
should
they?
be, it really should. What it should have been was more of an adults doing it. But adults now have have a lot of things to worry about. I'm not saying it's justified, definitely, but they need, but it's mostly up to us now, because in the future we are the ones who will have to change. We are the ones. So if we start now, we can continue doing it while we are adults, and our children won't have to live in such a in worse in a worse environment.
Right. We can definitely stop it from getting worse. I agree.
Yes.
How about you, Arunima? What do you think?
Yes, I think it's all up to the children because only a few adults think about the environment, whereas all the other adults, I'd like to use the word selfish. All the other adults are very selfish, only caring about themselves. I want this, I want that, no matter whatever happens to the environment. They're like, they have this I don't care kind of attitude. And no matter how many speeches Greta Thunberg and Lisa Priyakangaram gave, they'd never listen. No matter how hard the children and other people try to change their mindsets, their mindset is set. They're like, they would never change. So only a few adults and all the children are the change logos for the world, for the future. So yeah, I guess it's mostly up to the children and a little bit of a joint effort.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a joint effort, and in the process of children raising awareness among each other, if we manage to change the mindsets of a few adults, then there's nothing better than that.
Can I say something before the
Yeah.
next question?
Yeah, sure.
One thing I've noticed is very common is that when children try to introduce things to adults or try telling them things, they kind of feel annoyed and they are like, you shouldn't butt in, you're just a kid. But I think earlier during one of the talks going on, somebody brought up this point about. So yeah, I think the adults should also start realizing that as our generations have changed, mindsets have changed, how we learn and what we learn has changed. So now children are actually, have much more wide understanding of the world. We learn more, and that we know more now, and we might know more than adults, because at that point of time they might not have had the um, like opportunity to know stuff, and we have it right now. We learned it and they might still not know, and we can tell them and we can bring awareness. So I really think some adults should start changing their mindsets of how us kids can't do anything, because right now, like almost all of us said, it's mostly up to the like most children think it's mostly up to them because none of the adults will listen.
That's true. In fact, even at 23, even today, I am still told not to butt into an adult conversation. So I know what you mean. And yeah, definitely they need to learn to be more open and listen to us, and we should definitely have the right to question them on whatever is happening, right? And I'm going to wind up with the last question, but to everyone watching, if there are any additional questions, please do put them up in the chat box, and our panel would be happy to answer. But for my last question of the day, you all said that you read a lot of books which are green literature, environment themed, issue themed. Do such books inspire you at any point to think of a career or a job in this field, in maybe wildlife or climate change or something like that? And I'll start with Arunima.
Yes. So books are green literature, of course. They inspire me a lot, and I always tell my parents that I want to help the environment by doing this. I want to help the environment by doing that. So reading green literature makes me a lot more interested in researching about the environment or how I can help the environment through small actions, like at least by planting a few saplings, or switching off the light when not used. So these a few small actions make me. I feel it makes me put my. I feel a few small actions like that will help me carry forward and become a person who who helps the environment and who loves the environment a lot. So
Yes. How about you, Raghav? Have they inspired you to think of a career or job in the field?
I've actually had my career set for a while. Sure, they have influenced it, but it is always and always, probably always will stay a scientist. But what I would study has been influenced by books a lot.
And as a scientist, do you think at some point you'd like to look at ways you can help the planet when it comes to these issues?
I mean, won't that be like the first or second thing I do?
Yeah.
As a scientist, you're supposed to help the world, not exploit its resources, which are more.
Right. And how
But
about
see,
you?
also you remember the sucker from Cloud called Burra was actually replicated in real life.
So
It was
you did mention in your introduction that you hope to become an inventor someday. So I do hope that I come across one of your inventions someday and it does help save the planet. And Celesta, how about you?
Same like Raghavan, my career choice has been fixed ever since I was in kindergarten. I loved writing. I used to think that I could write for ages and I would not feel bored. And I also love acting. So it's always like my career choice always mediated between acting and writing. And then at one point I was like, why not just act for I mean, why not just write for shows and theater? So honestly, I love writing. I have written a lot of stuff and currently writing a lot. And I would love to start writing about something environmental related and put up environmental related stuff in my stories. So that's one way I could include environment into my career choice. And also, I think I would do more of the small stuff for environment, like for starters, start plastic segregation. Then there is trying to use biodegradable items like biodegradable toothbrushes and notebooks and pencils. There was actually this one pencil brand that had a seed stuck on the back of it in a capsule, and after using it you could just remove it and put the seed in a pot and plant it. So using stuff like that will also help a lot. So I just try to do the small things, because even though they're small, once you collect them, they'll become a really big help. So
I find your career aspiration very interesting, and I can't wait to read a book written by you someday on this issue. And to be honest, all three of you have such different interests and aspirations, and as I cannot wait to invite you into this field so that we all can work together in solving a very complex issue. And yeah, I think that's all from me. If there are any questions, please do put them up in the chat. There are a lot of people complimenting your spirit, and some even say that you three are characters straight out of Cloud Called Bhura. And before we wind up, I'm going to give each of you a chance to just say some words before you sign off. Try to keep it within a minute if possible. Arunima, I'll start with you. Do you have any last words here?
Yes, I just want to say that I'm really, really thankful and grateful that I'm a part of the GLF, and it was really amazing talking and listening to different point of views from everyone. And I hope everyone has a nice evening.
Thanks for coming here today, Arunima. How about you, Raghav? Any parting words today?
Well, thank you for including me in this panel where I'm allowed to express my opinion on book when anyone else goes to sleep. There are people who actually share my interests.
True.
And there are many different ways to tell a story, and everyone can, and that's the point of a book. It's a way to express yourself to the reader. There are there are almost infinite ways to write a book, and there are more than infinite ways to be pleased with them.
I think that's such an impactful statement that there are many different ways to write a story. I think it's, especially for today's theme, it's an important takeaway. And Celesta, how about you?
I would really love to thank you all for having me be part of GLF and all of the people, our audience who has been listening to us. I just hope our discussion over here has helped you all has helped broaden your point of views and mindsets and introduced how us children think and versus how adults think, and just give you something to ponder upon. And I hope all of you try to look for more books related to green literature, because I definitely will. I think being part of this has introduced me to so much more than I knew about books and stories and genres in general.
Yes, I echo Celeste's thoughts completely. Not only did I learn a lot from all of the books that were there in the long list, but I learned a lot from all three of you today as well. And I've taken some fantastic points away for myself too. And thank you to Megha and to the team at Greenlit Fest for hiring me for this discussion as well. I'll pass the mic on to Megha now.
Okay, so I am so thankful, kids. That was that was just so brilliant. I think all the comments that we've had are all praising all of you for just having such wonderful opinions. And what I really like is that you are so determined about what you're saying. It's not just being said loosely. And even though I am very much in adult territory, I think I can vote to have a connect to childhood thanks to my work in children's publishing, as I keep saying. So I just every time I listen to kids and also to young people like you, Tamanna, I am just so greatly inspired, because it really gives me hope for future. I think when children say things that make me ponder and make me think about the work I'm doing as a writer, as a person, as a publisher, it's so inspiring, and it's also so thought-provoking. So, and it's not always that we get to hear the children's perspective. So, I'm so glad that we could have all of you on our jury. We could have all of you in discussion here. And I really hope to see you all very soon again in some capacity, now that we have all come to know about each other and come to know about each other's works. So I'm just going to see if there are any questions before we go to the, there is Benedict who wants to know, how soon will you guys write your first book? So yes, and Tamanna, you're also being, praised for the way you've managed this panel. Lalit Kumar says that Tamanna, you have managed very well. So yes, so when are you going to write your first books? Arunima, why don't we start with you?
Yes, I've already started writing my very first novel. It's about the relationship between a boy and a ant. Yeah, it's going good.
Okay, and Celesta?
Actually, I have already started writing my very first novel too. I've written actually two, but both of them are underway. One of them I have published.
Okay.
Which is like most of my stories are related to romance. I really love cute stuff and relationships between two people. But the second one, which I'm currently writing, is heavily influenced by both romance and environment, because it's like it has magic as an element to it. So it introduces a lot about environment, and I think I kind of wanted to change my story in many ways after reading some of the books I did. So yeah, once I finish writing them, I will publish that book on romance and magic. But one of them I've already published, the first one, which I spoke about.
Okay, that's interesting. And Raghav, what about you? I know you have you see yourself as an inventor, but I know that you write prolifically. So yes, when are you going to publish your first book, or you think that your books are only for your eyes?
I mean, I don't really write to say publish it. No, my grandmom is a writer and my mom writes really well. I write just for fun and I make like short paragraphs, short stories. I don't make publish worthy things. I just make small paras.
Okay. Tamanna, what about you? Have you written anything? Are you interested in writing books? I know you do such a nice job with deconstructing issues around climate, but
Yeah, I think I was just reflecting, and I think mine has more been always towards science and writing research papers and things like that. So I think I do that much better. I wouldn't be able to even make the connection between a boy and an ant. So it's just, yeah, mine is more towards scientific writing.
okay, well, to each his own. But really, thank you so much to all of you and to your parents, for having you all here. And this was really, I think, the comments itself are testimony to the fact that we've really all enjoyed this conversation a lot. Sudeep is asking, Tamanna, where do I read your pieces? So I think, Sudeep, I did say that you can check out Tamanna's Instagram handle. It's Me Tamanna. But Tamanna, is there somewhere else where people can check out your writing?
Yes, I'll put up a link in the chat.
Sure. So Tamanna's link will go up on chat. Thank you so much. And I think we can all get ready to reveal the honor books, GLF WWF honor books 2021. So y'all can remain on the panelist link otherwise, but I'm going to now welcome Ridhima Pandey. I think Ridhima needs very little introduction. She is a young climate champion. She has been advocating for climate action since she was just 9 years old. And in 2020, the BBC listed her on 100 most influential women from around the world. So I think it's great that we have you here, Ridhima. Maybe a few words, and then we can have the honor book reveals.
Mm-hmm. Hello, everyone. Thank you for introducing me. I was listening to the discussion. I mean, I was not here since the beginning, but the bits I listened, I feel like I mean, most of the people, I mean, they're, the writers of the books here and mostly like writers and readers. So I feel kind of like I'm not a kind of like, a person to reflect much because, I mean, I told this to Meghadi that, I mean, I was not fond of books. I mean, I was not a vivid reader, and I mean, I just found books to be boring. And specifically, I mean, for my activism, I used to read. I mean, like articles and stuff, and I used to read those summaries that come up. But I mean, when I saw the books, it just felt like, ugh, I have to read a book. But gradually, it changed. I mean, I started working with people on books. I mean, giving my point of views and stuff like that. And after a point of time, I just felt like reading books are important. It is important for me. And specifically because, I mean, books have such, even if it's kind of like a story related to environment, or, if it's a friction related book, or if it's something related to a specific animal or to something, it just gives us, so I mean, specifically to me, it gave me so much exposure because I used to read stuff. And I mean, because my main work is around advocating. So what I feel like is that when I used to read books, I used to have these things, that I used to have those stories with me. So when I used to go to kids, I used to tell them that I read this book, and this was giving them a brief summary, and them enjoying that made me feel like reading books is important for me, but also for my activism. It gives me a lot of knowledge. It gives me an exposure to tell everyone the books, and to recommend that to others, and have that kind of a sense in my mind that I've read these things. And because I mean, I even had unearthed, which was kind of like a struggle for me in the beginning, but now I'm kind of like getting used to reading such books, and I am kind of trying to have the stuff going on. But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of books. I am still not a great reader, but I'm trying my best, and it's kind of fun reading books rather than kind of spending my day whole time, like my whole day on my tablets, or on internet and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, still kind of like a person who is trying to read, but it's a good thing, and I would recommend that to others as well, because once you start reading, you will get used to it, and you will actually get addicted to it. I mean, it's kind of like I have to read like at least for 1 hour, or I'll feel like I haven't done something. There is something that is missing from my routine. So yeah, it is something which is hard to get into your schedule, but once you get it, you will be like, it is a great thing. So yep.
I think to all our viewers, thank you, RK. That is the GLF WWF Honor Books Children's Shortlist, Ridhima, that was on our screen just a while ago. And it really shows how much children's publishing has come of age in India, and the kind of subjects that we're handling. Even within the green space, a lot of people were even surprised that there's so much of green literature being published, in our country, and so much of it for not just children, but practically for anyone interested in getting into this space. So yes, Ridhima, I think everyone's seen the shortlist, and now it's time for you to announce the honor books. So yes, I just have a little quick word to RK. We can have the certificates pop up once Ridhima announces. Oh, oops, the first certificate has come up even before she announced it. Okay, Ridhima, maybe you can just read out.
Okay, so the honor books are Making Friends with Snake but from a Distance by Rohan Chakravarti. You can see the...
Okay, before we get the next one, please wait. Rohan's anyways here with us, but Rohan, we are going to have to wait a few more minutes before we begin that conversation with you. But do stay on screen, yes. Okay, Ridhima, what is the next book?
The next book is Sahi's Quest by Yuvan Avis and Anusha Menon.
Okay, can we have the certificate for that? Okay, yay! Yay for Yuvan and yay for Anusha. Okay, let's have the next one.
The next one is A Tigress Called Machli by Supriya Sehgal, one of mostly loved books.
Yes, okay, yay for Supriya. Supriya, if you're there, you can come up on screen. Yeah.
I am here, Megha. Thanks.
All
This is so
right.
exciting. Thank you, guys.
Ridhima, the next one.
Yeah, the next one is 10 Indian champions fighting to save the planet by Bijal V and Radha Rangaranjan.
Okay, Bijal and Radha are here. Their certificate is up on screen. Bijal and Radha, you can come up on screen. I think, yes, the next one.
I see. Yeah.
There's...
The next one is Crave Pie School for the recently deceased by Anita Roy.
Yes, Anita is also with us. So a big yay to Bijal and Radha and Anita. And thank you so much, Ridhima, for announcing our award-winning books today. Thank you so much. And now you're most welcome, Ridhima. Really, thank you for doing this. And now can I have Archana Atri on screen, please? So for those of you who don't know, Archana Atri has been revolutionizing reading in the NCR for more than 10 years now. Archana she's been independently encouraging children to pick up books and read. And her book club is called, AA's Book Nerds. And she was our jury moderator, along with the 2 adult jury advisors who spent a lot of time with the children in determining the books that have been honored today. So Archana, I think I'm going to leave this conversation to you. And yes, I think we are all waiting to hear from everyone on the books that were chosen. And yes.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm so glad to be here at the Greenlit Fest and looking at the books and the authors who are here. Anita, I think Anita's here. Yeah. Hi, Anita's here. Supriya. Yes. Bijal and Radha and Rohan and Anusha. Congratulations, all of you, for, yes, fabulous books, fabulous reads. And with all the books that we had, as Bijal and Radha had mentioned in their book itself, lists, getting down, reading, going through. So you can imagine. But this was a fabulous set of books that we've been reading through the past month and more. And the children, the jury, you heard what they had to say. They're all believers. So it was absolutely fabulous. I always believe that anyone working with children in any form, whether you're writing, whether you're illustrating, publishing, or me with my book club, we all have to be believers. And when Nicola Davies was here and she was talking about communicating that fizz and that buzz, and I think that's what your books are doing, the way that in the quirky, in the easy, in the fun, in every which way, the way the words have been used, the way the images have been used to just communicate that passion and that fervor for literature, for the environment. It's just been absolutely marvelous. Supriya, your book Machli was just like it was, most of the children had this to say, that it was like reading a bedtime story. So where you had the other good time tales, you had good night stories for rebel girls, etc. These were the environmental tales that they listened to, was like listening to them, reading them, like the Dadi Nani ki kahaniyan. Those were kind of stories. And it was really, really nice. Would you like to share something more about your experiences while writing the book? I mean, I know you're a travel journalist. Would you call that travel journalist or?
Yeah, I've actually straddled a whole lot of other things as well, but travel was there for me for 15 years of my life. Thank you so much. And I feel so honored to be here in such great company. Oh my God, it's just so good. And thanks so much for the feedback, for what the kids felt. And I think this year and the year before this, we've had a lot of interactions with kids on, I've had quizzes with them, etc. And they get so involved. I think animals are such a great sort of, getting minds to come together, and kids sharing their own, stories about pets and their, travels around the world and in India. So it's been a very thrilling experience for me. The post-writing of the book has been equally thrilling as it was writing. I actually didn't set out to write the book specifically. It was stories collected over time where I had traveled for the last 15 years. And really thanks to Nimi and Vatsala from Hatchet to actually bring it together with me. It was really cool. And I think every story was so special because it had such a personal take to it, because it was about humans and in the interaction with animals. But my own favorite would be the one that's about a man called Latif who feeds kites in Jodhpur, Mehrangarh Fort. One of the more heartwarming stories that I literally stuck to my head, and still when I do go back sometimes I'd love to meet him, and I do when I go back. But yeah, thank you so much. It's been really thrilling.
Yeah. It was a thrilling read also. Anita, your book again, Grave Pyres, was just, there was just so much to it, not just the way it was written, the wordplay, the language. There was that literary element to it, which was really very interesting and strong, the fantasy. And what was very interesting with the children when they read the book was the environment, or the ecology, the environment, the climate. References to those weren't shoved down your throat, right? So so it was all there. But the way in which they took it out of the story, for me, that was very important. And that was very interesting, because it's, as one of the children said, that there are infinite ways in which you can please a reader. And I think that was the beauty in your book, that it wasn't all laid out. You had to glean as much as you could from the book as you read it. So would you like to share something on that about your book? Because that's the beauty of it. There wasn't any one element or strand, but the way they came together was just so beautiful.
Well, thank you, Archana. I've been just grinning really for days now since I got to hear that I was on the book was being shortlisted. Yeah. In a way for its environmental message, because it's not kind of front and center in the way that some of the other books are, and also secondly because the jury is made up of kids, and what amazing kids they are. I mean, I've just been kind of slightly awestruck by Raghavan and Celesta and the others, and it's just like, oh my goodness, they're so young and they're so articulate and they're so amazing. So one of the things that I really like that Raghavan just said in the session before this one was about finding your audience, the right level for your audience. And I particularly like that because it's really hard to actually pinpoint, because all 14-year-olds are different and all 6-year-olds are different. And 6-year-olds are also different from 14-year-olds. And so as a publisher, I was always really struggling with how do you kind of pinpoint the age appropriateness of things. And I really have to hand it to my editor Kartika at Westland Books, because at one point, and this book took forever to write. I mean, it was just such a long process. In fact, my son yesterday was saying, Mum, I was telling my friends that he's now at university, that she started writing this book when I was 8. It's kind of grown up with him. I don't think he ever believed it would actually be out. I certainly didn't. But yeah, it's a book which Kartika at one point said to me, don't worry about writing it for a particular age. Just write the story as you want to write it. If we need to tweak the language later, we'll do that. But I think what I've learned from writing the book is that, and maybe this is something that the kids can also take away when they're thinking of, or anyone really, if you're thinking of writing a book, is don't pre-censor yourself in terms of who you think the audience might be. Write the book that's from your heart. Write the book that you yourself would want to read, and let it take you on a journey. I certainly didn't realize that my story, which started off with a single line, which was homework, but I'm dead, that was it. That was the kind of beginning of this story that takes you into mortality and talking vultures and journeys and death and ecology and environmental catastrophe and issues about time and all sorts of things. It just sort of came from like very quietly and slowly over many years following that thread.
Yeah. Even the title of your book, The Grey Fires School for the Recently, it was just something that when I saw it, I said, oh, this is interesting. What could it be about? And then, of course, there were the vultures and just a whole story about the vultures. And, and now with COVID, and so when I was looking at it, in the context of COVID and deaths.
Yeah, I mean, there was a very tricky point at which the book was just about to come out and COVID hit. And I seriously wondered, and my publishers thought very hard about whether it was even appropriate to publish a book for children about death at a time when mortality and fragility is so front and center and people were losing their loved ones and everything was very, very emotionally and physically very difficult to negotiate. And again, credit to my publishers. They said, actually, at this point, this is probably the best point for a book like this to be talking, to be published, because it's a way of opening conversations, which can be extremely difficult. And I don't know any conversation which is as difficult as mortality and climate change. These are hugely, almost impossibly difficult subjects to look at head on.
Yeah.
And so you need to find ways of being able to address them. They're absolutely central to all of our lives. There's no one that escapes this, but we need to find ways of talking about them at every age. And I think, for me, Grave Fires is a book as much for adults as kids, because it doesn't get any easier.
Yes, absolutely. When I read it, I teared up because it was very close to home.
Yes, this is what I want. I want to make people basically cry.
It's especially when I read the ending with the seed of hope, and it was just so beautiful. So yes, actually, as we're talking about age, I think all books, whether I was reading Machli, I was reading all the other books, picture books, I'm a huge fan of. So I really don't think that there is this whole thing about when we are talking about what age for what book. It really depends on what it says to you, what the book says to you, what the words say to you. So it was fabulous. And again, when you're talking about emotions, that's what I feel with children's books in particular, the emotions have to be out there. If you don't feel the emotions to communicate that to the children, that passion and that fervor, that's how it will go on to the children. And that's where I would like to congratulate Rohan, his passion and his fervor and the comics that he brings through. His book was, it's a fabulous book because of the way in which he's communicating his passion. So when people say, keep emotions aside, no, don't keep emotions aside. Get them into your work, get them into your book. That's what the children are going to see. So Rohan, congratulations. That was absolutely such a beautiful book. And the way it's been just said, really bringing to, the snake is the hero in your story.
Thanks a lot, Archana. I'm actually really surprised that the book made it to the shortlist because there are some fabulous entries alongside. It's actually a very simple and a very straightforward book. So I wonder how it even made it to the list. It's more of a manual to me rather than a storybook, so it's really that simple. And maybe it is the simplicity that struck a chord with the jury, or maybe it was my good looks and charm. I don't really know.
Maybe all of it.
Or maybe it was the very good-looking protagonists, Dhaman and Nagin, the rat snake and the cobra. I hope that is the case. So thanks a lot. It's a real honor being in the list.
So I've been working with children for more than a decade now. I run a book club, and my one thing is no books have a protagonist. That's what schools tell you. There's a protagonist in the book. Okay, and the story has to be from the point of view of the protagonist. Here I didn't see any protagonist. There was no snake. Could be Mitali was a protagonist, could be anyone who's a part of that story. So for me, this was that's the beauty of this, that there are so many other characters, not just the snakes. And that's where it goes to, talking about nature, talking about bringing bringing animals closer to you, especially in our kind of condominiums that we're living in. I don't think my children have seen a snake, a real live snake in their life. And the children around here, I don't have snake, I don't have rats coming up, I don't have lizards coming up. Yet they are there. They're a part of our environment. They're part of the ecology. They're part of our ecosystem. So, so definitely, when you're saying, why did this comic book make it here? It made it here because you're telling children about something which they haven't really seen. I grew up with my dad was in the Air Force, so places we lived in, there were snakes. Snake skins. We would pick up the snake skins and they'd carry them with us to whichever places we were transferred to, etc. So also the style of writing, I think that again was very interesting, and that really is something that you brought to children's literature in just such a fabulous way. So that you are here, you were meant to be here.
Thank you. I must give credit to Romulus Whitaker, who runs the Madras Crocodile Bank Trust and is a renowned herpetologist. And it was actually his infectious enthusiasm about snakes that went on into the book. And I really must thank him for choosing me to collaborate over this. And I also owe gratitude to Pratham Books, Bijal and Aparna, who edited the book, for ensuring distribution, because that is what made all the difference. It was translated into 9 regional languages and distributed across the country. And I hope that it is helping kids across the country make friends with snakes, but from a distance. Another thing I'd like to point out is that the issue of snake bite and the relationship between people and snakes is not often seen as a social issue. And I hope that is something that I will be able to change with this publication.
Okay. That's okay, Bijal. And I think what is very interesting is the next book is that I would like to welcome Bijal and Radha with your 10 Indian champions fighting to save the planet. And what for me is particularly interesting about this book, 10 Indian, Bijal and Radha, I can't see you here. Okay, what I found really this thing about their book is we're talking about superheroes with capes. And that's what we are looking at here. We are looking at our green heroes with their green capes. And that's why for me, 10 Indian Champions was a particularly interesting book. Because when I'm talking to children and working with children, that's what the children want. They want to know about the real people, the ones who are working. And that's why this was very interesting, because Rohan is one of the children that one of the characters that my children were saying should be, oh, he's another green superhero. And then we have the super sheroes and the superheroes. And that's why for me, this book was very important, because it brings the champions closer to the people in the environmental, to the children in the environmental context. Bijal and Radha, something's gone wrong with the Megha?
No, Bijal and Radha are here.
Here, Archana. Hi.
Sorry, I can't see you for some reason. Yeah, I can see Radha and I couldn't see Bijal. And yeah, sorry, must be something wrong with my screen. As I was reading about your book and the way that, getting the hundreds down to 50s and 60s, etc. What was the process like for you in writing about the 10 Indian champions? And of course, there are so many more.
Thank you, Archana, for all the wonderful things you have said and to the jury for shortlisting us. I'm going to let Radha tell you this, because when it comes to listicles, she's the BuzzFeed out of the two of us.
Hi, Archana. Thank you so much. And it's a real honor to win this and, just be a part of this list. great company. So yeah, it goes very well with all of my OCD senses, to make a lot of lists. And even now I have like 20 post-its of different colors everywhere. So I know exactly which list to look at when. Not that I'm very efficient or anything, but lists are nice to make. So that's where it is. But, yeah, like Bijal and I went through a lot of different uh, phases of wondering, who should be a part of this book. And of course, we always keep going back to the greats who are, the people who did everything and set up the stage for everybody now to work on, issues that are coming up, or, take successes forward. So we always keep going back to names like Dr. Salim Ali or Indira Gandhi, who set up Project Tiger, or, the Fateh Ali family, for example, who have been instrumental in so many of the successes that many of us are part of today. But we realized that at the end of the day, we need to look at the audience, like how all the jury members were talking about earlier. We have to look at the audience, and we have to give them someone who is relatable, who is present now, who is posting on Instagram, who is, tweeting every day about a certain issue. So that's where someone like Rohan comes into picture, because they have a person they can look up to, whom they can follow and they can learn from. So that's why we went this route and found people who are working right now and are working in a very relatable fashion for a younger audience. So that's where it comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so brilliantly done. In fact, when you're saying I remember when I was talking to my nerds about, when Greta Thunberg had come and all, and that was all the other stories would emerge, that there's a Greta there, but we have this one, but we also have so and so. There's just so many people who are doing such fabulous work that really I can, just about imagine how it, where do you get who, and, put down the list. And again, as I said, for us, this was particularly important because the children want to know the real people. So fiction, yes, non-fiction, yes, but who are the people who matter and who have done what they have? So for me, the last story was also very interesting, where you're talking about, not the last, Dharavi Rocks, yes, but there was also the one on Food for All.
Yeah.
And for me, that was very interesting, because we have the other book, which was also part of our long list, was a No Nonsense Nandini. And I just saw between the two of them, there was just such a beautiful connection that I was seeing there, that, you're looking at the knowledge that is coming out from the grassroots. And there is Nandini. Nandini was somebody, a lot of children who read it, my nerds and the others that I would talk to, loved it for that reason. That, there is knowledge which doesn't have to be top down. It's coming from the farmers, coming from the people. And that's what your stories were all about. That's what the people that you looked at. For me, that was very interesting. And I'm sure the children are really going to enjoy this book for that reason. That these are people that they can reach out to and, see the work happening. So thank you for this book. This is truly a fabulous book.
I think I just want to add here, Rachna, that the credit actually does go to our editor, Shani and Ayushi of Duckbill PRH, because they gave us the freedom to navigate the people who we wanted to talk about, but also the approach where we said we'd like to go and meet or talk to each and every person. And that kind of freedom and flexibility just helped us with these stories.
And it must have been so rewarding for you too, to just sit there and talk to these kind of people. And for the children, yes, to read the stories, but for you guys to go and meet them and talk to them, that must have been a fabulous, for the authors themselves, the act of creating a book must be just so special.
I think for us, every time we'd step back from a conversation, both of us just would be like, how are we going to put this down into this many words? Because all of them, including Rohan and Kavita and Dharavi Rocks, everyone has done such amazing work. So to condense it was such a challenge, but they also had, what was amazing, Archana, was that almost every single person, when we approached them and said, we'd like to feature you in the book, and they said, why me? There's so many other people.
Yes, there are so many other people doing so much, but there's the one person, one star that if I can touch, I'm happy with. So I'm glad with this book. I'm really happy with this book. And Yuvan, I think, was not able to join us. Anusha is here with Sahi's Quest. Again, a very, very, it was just such a, I think just an aside for me maybe, but all the books are in some ways a quest. You know, all the books that we have here in some ways as a quest, there's a searching, there's a reaching out to, there's a looking for. And that I think was the beauty with all these 5 books that we have here on our list. And Sahi's Quest was just such a gentle story. You know, the way it just took us with her, took us through the journey of the journey through this book was just so gentle and just so beautiful. The illustrations, I can't even hold it up. People will have to buy the book and read it. But the whole book was just so beautifully done. Anusha, if you're here, would you like to share something with us about the illustrations for the book and the story while you were illustrating it?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank you for including me in this list. And it's such an honor to be here, especially from an illustrator's point of view. I'm like a huge fangirl of Rohan's comic series, and especially the latest digs he's been doing, about the cop. I'm really glad to read all that. But yeah, I think the illustration process really, you brought up this point about there being no protagonist, and that we're all together. So in the process of illustrating these books, I especially trying to get as much detail as possible, because that's something I remember enjoying a lot when I was a young reader. I would love detailed illustrations and I would love getting lost in them. So I wanted to try my best to give another kid the same sense of wonder and details to just swallow and go through and look at again and again. I hope I've managed to do that, but that's something I keep trying to do. And because of getting into the details, you just have this feeling of yes, there is no protagonist, and we're all parts of the environment, and everything that's cycling through the environment goes through every single unit and every single creature that is part of it. So that was what illustrating the book was like for me. And it's always an educational process for me, that whenever I end up collaborating with an author or illustrating a book that way, I just learn so much about the environment through that process. So it's really my way of interacting with the world, through getting immersed in the space and really getting into the whole process of illustration, observation, and then trying to meditate upon what that creature does in the environment. Really, I'm always in awe of it keeps me in awe of the world, and it makes me want to protect it because it's so beautiful. And but the problem I personally face, which I feel listening to the kids today really helped me a lot, because I tend to get really bogged down and depressed about the way things are going. And you read a lot of doomsday stories, this forest has been cut down here, or these tribals are being evicted from here. And it's really, really heavy, and it's really sad to read about all this. But and the discourse online is very doom. There's so much doom, but listening to the kids today and the panelists, and how articulate they are, and how well they connect with nature, and how determined they are, and how much agency they already have. They already feel they owe it to the planet, and they already feel they want to protect it too. And they already feel confident that we can tell the adults what to do. I loved hearing that so much, because I mean, as adults, we were also kids once, right? And we know what it's like to be talked down to and told to step aside and all. But I don't think we have time for that anymore. And we have to work together And I'm so happy that this event sent like God gave the kids a whole hour to talk about it and inspire us, because I'm walking away from this talk feeling very inspired and feeling like I want to draw more and like keep doing what I do. And hopefully, because see, like what the kids learn is like what we kind of tell them in stories as well, but then they come back and read the stories and tell us what they think about it. So we get feedback. So I think that feedback process is very, very important, and we can inspire kids, and the same goes for us being inspired back by them. So that's really what I wanted to talk about mostly. And I wish Yuvan were here today, because he's such an important nature educator as well. Like he takes kids out right into the forest and shows them what I've just done with illustrations. But it's different when you go into the real environment and see what's happening. And I'm glad like some of you kids have memories of being in nature and interacting with nature. I was so happy to hear about like the jamun trees, and like again you feel the sense of loss like when the jamun trees are cut. So I'm so glad like Yuvan is doing such important work by educating kids and taking them out into nature and showing it to them. I hope like we all keep getting opportunities like that to actually go and immerse ourselves in nature, because it would be really sad if the only interaction we have is through books and through paper and not through like actually going there. And I hope we can figure a way out to deal with what all the complex issues, because it's not just environment, it's also like it's really complicated, interlinked and intersectional kind of issues. So through our stories we can bring that out. And I hope like I'm so glad to see so many people here. And of course like I do follow Rohan's work, but I'm so happy to see more work. Like I have new books to read, and I was actually looking for more stuff to read, so I'm gonna go through all the books that are in the list, and like hopefully, yeah, I'm looking forward to being inspired by all of them. So yeah, thank you so much. And I would like to credit like Kalpavriksh and the work they do as well in bringing books to the public, because yeah, we have the book, but it needs to be distributed and disseminated. So I'm really happy that there are publishers who are doing this, like Pratham and Kalpavriksh, and events like this happening. So yeah, more power to everyone, and let's keep up the good fight. Yeah, okay, thank you.
More power to you, Anusha, because you're a believer. And if you're a believer, you will communicate that through your illustrations, through your beautiful work. And that's what will get to the children, to the readers, not just the children, all the readers. So more power to you and the fabulous work that you are doing in bringing nature to the children. Even where children are living in their condos and with their gadgets and whatever, you're still telling them that there is a dragonfly, there is a story, there is so much happening there. And thank you for that. Yeah.
Can I just add something, Archana?
Yes.
Just to say, Anusha, I'm so glad that you brought that up about taking children out into nature and the difference between experiencing something that's mediated, whether it's on screen or whether it's through a book or whether it's through a painting, and experiencing the real thing. Because that's actually where the spark of real, genuine connection and therefore love and therefore care and therefore fierce protectiveness and all of that sense of connection that inspires all of us. That's where that comes from. I've been writing for the Guardian Country Diary column recently, and yesterday there was a meeting with all of the people who write these the Country Diary column, which is essentially a little snippet of a moment when you interact with the wild. Whatever form that might be. It might be a slug, it might be an eagle, the whole sort of spectrum. It might be a plant. And recently the Guardian has started up this year, they started up this thing for the called Young Country Diarists, and they put out a call to kids under the age of 16 to send in their nature writing. And the editor was saying, they had just in 1 week, they had over 600 pieces in, and he said of those 300 were not just good, and they were not just publishable, they were really good. They were really good. So and each of those it's not about nature, it's an encounter with nature. It's not saying I read this really interesting book or I saw this amazing program. It's saying I tripped over a slug, or I heard a bird, or this thing happened. And I think that the real and the tangible stuff is so important that I don't know what I'm saying, I'm blabbering on a bit, but I'm just so glad that you said that, and I'm so glad that this festival has been so enabling of these children to feel the agency that they do have, and that they should have, and that they should have more of. And one of the things that occurred to me while I think it was Celesta saying about doing a little bit, like realizing that you can do a little bit, and that lots of people doing a little bit adds up to a lot, reminded me of someone saying recently that, in terms of agency and power, especially in terms of issues to do with the climate crisis and the ecological crisis, the votes should simply all be given, like our democracy should simply be that everyone under the age of 30 can vote and no one else. And I just thought, my God, that's a bit of a radical idea. Like, I'm not sure I like that because I'm over 30, but they have a point. They have a point that you really need to take a long-term view on all of these issues, and the short-termism that is integral to our political systems. It's like their fundamental thing is that we need votes like with quick results. And that's just basically what has, I'm well known for swearing, and I may say bad things, so I'm not going to go there, but basically it's bad. It's got us to where we are.
Yes. Bijal, Bijal has also worked. Bijal, you obviously, with all the books that you've been writing, and there was Cloud called Bhura, which really brings this to the fore in such important ways. Would you like to share something, add to what Anita has just said?
As Anita was talking, which I was nodding away, which happens a lot when Anita talks, because she's always saying such wonderful things. But I was researching for my next book, and one of the things that really frightened me was this term that came to me constantly. It's called environmental generational amnesia, which basically means that every generation perceives the environment as what they're born into, which means that they're living more and more in constructed environments. So that's what they perceive as nature. And the authors had given this example of something that actually made me laugh first, which said that children will, in built environments, will think of a squirrel as a big mammal and fountain as big water. And then it sobered me up, because it just like, that is a frightening thought, that this is what we are perceiving nature as. It's very, very degraded, built up form. And for me, which is why green literature becomes very crucial, because it helps navigate these very, it helps bring back the forgotten. It helps you remember why nature is important. And Arjuna, I see this when you do it with, do sessions with your nerds. I think one of the most important things is that even when I go into classrooms, a lot of children will always be like, I want to save the planet. And I'm always like, let's step back a bit and let's talk about why we want to save it. Let's talk about the things we love. We want to remember. We want to look up and look at the skies, which are full of stars. We want to look at a caterpillar. And that's when the real conversation starts. And I just think that books are just one small way of making that conversation stay in, as Anusha said, collective memory.
Yes, and in fact, that's what when Ridhima was saying that she's an activist more than in terms of, she doesn't read too much. But that's what I tell my nerds and the parents who come in, you don't have to read. The world doesn't set, the sun doesn't rise and set in the pages of a book. Go out and see the real sun. So similarly as what you're saying, it doesn't have to be with a book. Step out of the book and do more. Whatever that more may mean for you. That more might mean, I have this little 7-year-old girl who says, Archana auntie, I I want to plant a garden like Sundar Bagh, but I can't because there's so much of greenery where I'm living already. So her dad's, I mean, the place they live in Thane is very green. So instead, she will send me photographs of mushrooms and snakes and monitor lizards, etc. But she's, I can't plant a garden, so I can't make the world greener. So there is this thing about books and stepping out of books and doing more, as what Anita was also talking about. Yeah, Anusha, would you like to share something?
Yeah, especially because the direct action that grassroots activists are doing and indigenous activists are doing, like, we don't even see half of it, like, which is, it's unglamorous, really, really hard work, really scary work. People get jailed. So, I mean, there's so much going on, and we are comfortably sitting and drawing it and communicating it to, like, people. We have that, I mean, there's privilege that comes while we're drawing it this way. But, like, the thing is, how long will we, I mean, it's good to be consuming and being inspired by the content, but ultimately, are we going to just sit and like read and be comfortable, like looking at all our pretty pictures? And when do we, like, you know, how will it translate to something like direct action, or what are other things, like, because illustration and writing is one thing, but like the actual hard work is, I'm sure, like, if written, that's why it's great to have books about, like, you know, centering like activists, like the 10 like the green superheroes. I'm looking forward to reading that one. And like, our job is to like bring all these things and get it to people who haven't been exposed to it at all. But there's also that sense, like, okay, I shouldn't get too, like, personally, I feel like I shouldn't get too comfortable and like be thinking, oh yeah, it's done now, because there's so much really, really, really hard work that is being done, that is not illustrated beautifully, that is really pushing things forward. So I just want to stay grounded that way. And like, that's why I really admire Rohan's work as well, because he really centers these issues in his comics, and it keeps me grounded, and I'm really glad. And I'm really hoping to, I'm definitely going to read all the books that are on the list. And that's all I just wanted to add, like, about that. Yeah.
In fact, Rohan, that's one of the thing, you, with your snake story, etc., you really have brought the messiness of life into your this thing. And I say messiness because I'm guilty of having killed snakes. When I was growing up in Devlali, we would have, I was what, class 2 or 3, and we would have snakes coming into they're in our washroom, they'd be under the bed or whatever. This was a place where there were a lot of snakes.
There's some good news for you in the book, Archana. One of the myths that we debunk is that snakes don't take revenge.
Yes, yes, the film Nagin. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that was the other thing about the cobras. That if you kill a cobra, the eyes will capture your image, and their entire story about somebody who will take revenge. Yes. So no, so that's what when Anusha was saying that, yeah, we can sit back and create stories and do our illustrations, but actually what you're doing is the snakes, and you're taking them to children in a way which is just so much more fun. And at the same time, I mean, as I'm saying, I grew up saying, oh God, a snake, scary. It's still scary, but at least now it's not something that I'm going to kill immediately. But I'm also talking about a time where we did not have a telephone to call up somebody and say, there's a snake in the bathroom, what do I do? So those are different times, but the beauty in the way in which you're getting children to, look at creepy crawlies and snakes, etc. As Anusha is saying, one is just, what are we as illustrators doing, or what are we as writers doing? You are bringing these to children. You are bringing them into their, world. And at some point of time, how that reflects and where it takes them later, that is what we're going to, that's the seed of hope that we are planting. Yes. Supriya, would you like to share something more with us in terms of the beautiful stories that you told us about, again, making so much of it come alive for the children, again, in real stories?
My entire inspiration absolutely lay in real stories, because I was visiting these places and actually meeting people who had a connection with animals just by chance. So it was such a it was such a jogging of the memory really after all these years to bring those stories together. But I did get a chance to then go back and speak to a lot of them, whether it was on the phone or actually go in person and meet them. And it was truly exciting, as I can imagine for Bijal as well, that having traveled and actually met those people, the level of inspiration is naturally amped up quite a bit. So I was so inspired and I was so moved by their stories. Coming to the phase of the book was much later. So, and I think, as Anusha also said, that people are doing the work on the ground are really truly the heroes here, and not us folks are putting it in words. So yeah, it was just a very exciting 15 years or so really of getting these stories together. But yeah, that's what I've had.
Yes. Okay, I think we are out of time. Are we short over our time? I'm not too sure.
I think we've been pretty good with the time.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm actually very glad. I was thinking maybe we not have enough time, but I'm really glad at how much time we've managed to have. I just do want to say very sorry that you couldn't join us due to some very unfortunate personal reasons. But to all the winners, our certificates are printed on 100% recycled paper. In fact, I think they've managed to source a special, my colleague Pooja and Benedict have managed to source this special kind of paper made of cotton rags. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to how the certificates eventually get printed. There's also a trophy that is designed on sustainable materials by our partner Tamila. And there is a cash prize that we've managed to muster in our first year for all the winners. And there is a goodie bag from WWF. So yes, I feel like Santa handing out Christmas goodies end of the year. But really, thank you so much to all of you for being here. And for Archana, despite all your nerves, you have been absolutely fantastic in moderating the panel, I should say, because Archana is like furiously, I am developing cold feet.
So nervous talking to all of you.
it was, I think what's really interesting for me is because I've of course read all of the books, and then to, hear from you all the process that goes into the book, because as readers, we read it, but then as I think it's always so fascinating to pick the brain of the people behind the books, because it's not that easy to write books, and it's even more difficult to market them. So, I am just so glad that all your books are on our first honor book list. I'm really delighted by the collection of books. And I really just hope that we can promote green literature in general on a larger scale. And really, I think Archana and I were talking earlier, our long list, our short list, all the discussions with the kids. I mean, really, I think green literature is such that we need to probably make space for more books and more people writing this literature, and encourage more voices to come into the field to get that right sort of messaging. Not messaging, actually, I hate the word messaging, but the right sort of narrative. I know Archana is going to later call me up and say, shoot, you use the word messaging in children's books, but but really, I mean, it's just fascinating. I mean, such original work, Anita Grave Pyers, such an original story to look at death and to look at, nature within the paradigm of human existence. It's so beautifully sort of coming together. And Bijal and Radha, I know, sorry.
No, I was just going to add to that I think that the shortlist is just so brilliant, because it kind of illustrates exactly how difficult it is to define the edges of what is nature writing, or what is environmental books, or what is a green book, because and this is something that anyone and everyone who's involved in the environmental side of things just goes on about all the time. But it's everything. There isn't a human world and an environment that's separate. It's everything. And with these books, we've got lists of real people doing real activism. We've got picture books. We've got funny books. We've got really serious books. It's kind of bringing, I think, the whole of your humanity to the project, and also being as inclusive as as you can, because it's a hugely difficult and huge problem that we are facing individually, locally, collectively, nationally, globally, everything. Like, we need everyone on board with this. If we're not to, just end up with completely disaster.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think one of the things we really wanted to do when we sat down to have this literature festival is not just pick, like have books and then forget about them and award them and forget about them, but really, because it's like almost like a mission when we sit down and think about it. So it's not something we'd want to end now. We'd want to actually increase the outreach of the books. So we've been in conversations with people to hope to get more, kids reading. And, it was really fascinating to see some of the reactions to the long listed books that we sent to our little jury. I think it was just so amazing. So we're more and more convinced that we need to.
I'm really proud of the 5 books that, well, all of them, yes, but the 5 books that were made it were just so, just about everything came together with the 5 books, and reflecting the diversity in the styles of writing and what we are writing about. I think I'm really proud of the books that we have here.
And, Bijal and Radha, the green superhero books, and, Supriya, I got my mother to read a tigress called Machli. And my mother's, she's been reading only children's books ever since I started my career, because she says they're just so much more readable than adult books for her. The font is bigger and the design is easier to maneuver and the writing is easier. And I must say, I mean, what Archana said about the stories being so unbelievable, and yet so like she couldn't get over the crocodile who ate like rice. Like, she's like, are you sure she saw this? Are you sure she saw this? I need to know. So I was like, I'm sure she saw this. She's put in a goddamn book. If she's lying, she'll get caught easily.
That's right here.
And, Anusha, Yuvan, and Rohan, I mean, what can I say, picture books and, just such different forms of looking at, the themes that were explored. Archana said enough about the books on a list, but really, I'm really happy because, I'm very happy to have had this opportunity to curate the children's program and to see the wonderful books that have been awarded. And yes, your Santa Christmas goodies should be reaching you in some time. I think all of you have sent in your details, but yes, a big thank you to all the panelists, to all our audience members who joined us today. It's just been fantastic, to hear your comments, to get your questions. You really enriched our, first year as a festival, and we hope that we can build a bigger dream as we go on.
A bigger green dream.
Sorry?
Green dream. Bigger green dream.
A bigger, greener dream. Yes, that's true. Can I have the banner for our partners, please? Because I think it wouldn't have been possible without our partners, WWF India, the India Climate Collaborative, Terry and Asley India, for being with us from the beginning of this journey. To our outreach partners, Books on the Delhi Metro. I mean, Shruti, your passion for everything green and everything books is just so endearing. And I think to all the people on the shortlists and to all the honorees, I think you should just go and see. Shruti has been running a contest for all the honor books, and she's going to be promoting all the books that have been, honored and shortlisted through her Earth Book Club on Instagram. So that's one of the outreach plans we have. To our partner Round Glass Sustain for all the wonderful, green coverage that they do. Funky Rainbow, I hope that we are able to contribute enough to raise a good budget for green books in your community library project, Vidya. Tamila, just such fantastic products made out of everything green, and Environics, for their contribution. Green Literature Festival is presented by Sustainability Next, which is an online e-magazine run by Benedict from Bangalore for the last, I think he started in 2013. And yes, the festival is supported by the Habitats Trust. A huge thank you to Santosh sir and everyone else at the Habitats Trust, Ms. Nader and Rushi, for funding our dreams, literally. I think on that note, from the team, can I just have the festival team on screen, please? Benedict, Pooja, Dibarathi, if you're here, Richa, Ganesh, MC, it'll be really nice to have all of you on screen because it's our last event of the year. And yes, I think we ought to have everyone on the team on screen. Can everyone come in, please? I see Pooja and Richa's here.
Yeah, everyone's on, I think.
Everyone's there?
Yeah, Rohan's there.
Okay, I can't see Benedict.
He's here. He's only
He's here.
muted. Yeah.
Okay, maybe he's not showing in my gallery.
Only
Okay,
Debarathi is missing.
Okay. So that is the festival team. It's a very lean team. So we apologize for any glitches that have happened, but all unintentional and all because, we've been struggling a little bit. But yes, I think very, very happy with how this has gone. And since it's the last event of the year, we wish all the panelists, we wish all our audience and everyone who has tuned in a very peaceful and joyful year end. And if you have any questions or comments or suggestions, please do write into us at contact@greenlitfest.com. And we promise to see you next year, 2022, with a bigger and better festival. But in the meantime, yes, please do have a peaceful and joyful new year and stay safe, stay healthy. See you next year. Bye-bye. Bye. From all of us on the team, a huge goodbye.
I think
Thank you for
one thing I would add is the beauty about having the children's conversation today and the session is, I think it took us all back to our roots. And I think that's beautiful, that we're ending on that note. So anyway,
Yes. No, that's true. Benedict, do you want to say something?
Yeah, quite happy the way everything has turned out and the way we pulled it off. I think beyond my expectation.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
And please, I think to everyone, we've had some wonderful books listed at GLF this year in all the 3 lists. So if you're looking to give book presents, please do pull out books from these lists because they've been very carefully curated. And, I think it'll really help in the outreach plans that we have for all the books that we ever pick. So thank you so much and goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you
Bye.
guys.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Have a nice day, everyone. See you.
Bye.
Thank you, Arunima. Bye-bye.
So we just hang in here for a few minutes.
Yeah, but we go, let's not